Rock. Team Rock.
Cathal McShane. But you got two right.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, you're very welcome along. It is, I want to say, Wednesday morning. I think I'm nearly 100% sure that it's Wednesday morning. And if you're out there, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. We've got a doozy of a show lined up for you. Loads of rugby. We're going to get the English view ahead of the game this weekend. Matt Dawson's going to join us a little bit later on with Keith Wood. We're obviously going to talk about the Liverpool game tonight. We're going to talk about Erling Haaland. We're going to talk about Cheltenham and the magic that was about 45 minutes of absolutely incredible racing. Banksmack with the third and fourth last races, and obviously the Brom heads finding a moment of calm in the midst of the maelstrom. We'll talk about all that with John Duggan a little bit later on. We'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Lots of Rafa Benitez is back in the papers today talking about the miracle is on, you know, reminding us all of his very existence. He's very publicly profile, a very high public profile at the moment. Nathan, good morning to you.
Hey, lads.
How's it going?
Very well.
Shane's here too.
Good morning. How are things?
Yeah, good. Why is Rafa so public? Is in Rafa's head? Is he a candidate for the Liverpool job when that becomes available again? Is he?
No.
In his head. I'm not asking if it's real or not. In his head.
Surely not. He's spent enough time going around those sort of. I'll choose my words when I say mid-ranking jobs. At Newcastle, at Everton, it does feel as though his days of Champions League clubs are probably behind him. He was strongly linked with that West Ham job. There seemed to be a feeling that maybe he was putting himself out there once again. But you are at that stage of the season where maybe, there's 9 teams in a relegation scrap. Maybe 1 or 2 of those teams might still panic between now and the end of the season and think, we need to do something different. Let's get an experienced head in. And Rafa's like, hey, you've called the right guy. He's also a Champions League winning manager who lives on Merseyside, who's living in England, who's around the place, who maybe just gets a little bit bored sometimes and thinks, you know what, I want to get out there and do a bit of work.
Enough. Yeah, fair enough. You can't go to Everton though and come back to Liverpool. That's
Well, you can't. He couldn't go back to Liverpool anyway.
Nah.
The ship has sailed. Yeah. But absolutely. And
the ship and his style of football has sailed.
Yeah, and his competitive advantage, which was knowing the Spanish market better than anybody else at that stage and having enough credibility to be able to land some big fish, that also has sailed a long time ago too. So anyway, I don't know. It's just because he was in the papers this morning. One other thing that's in the papers, and we're going to talk about the Republic of Ireland in a moment, but Lee Carsley is considering his position and may leave the underage job that he has with England at the end of the Euros. And they're linking, in the Times today, in the London Times, they're linking Stevie G, Frank Lampard, Ashley Cole with that role, and obviously they will definitely speak to those about it, which might not be the worst thing for those managers to go and do something a bit off Broadway with the young talent as a stepping stone to potentially getting the England gig.
Could their egos take that? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say no. I mean, come on, those lads want to be front and centre. Championship job, back up to the Premier League.
Stephen Gerrard's doing interviews for Liverpool TV. You know, he was sitting out with Mo Salah at the weekend. Maybe because it's Mo Salah and game recognised game, and he's about to break the record.
He's keeping himself busy. He's back on BT Sport. I think if the FA came to any of those former internationals and said, look at this pathway that worked so successfully for Gareth Southgate, look at your current CVs, we cannot give you the England job when Gareth Southgate leaves, when, you know, what happened at Everton for you, Frank, and what happened at Villa for you, Stephen. But if you go and you work for the next 2 or 3 years at this under-21 job, it's a relatively no-pressure job. You win the vast majority of games because of the amount of talent you have, build yourself up, and suddenly you fit into our culture, you understand what we're all about, and it's easy for us to give you the gig. So I think ego is probably out the window when it comes to this, if there's a clear pathway to them getting the big gig.
Lee Carsley being available in the summer might ratchet up pressure if things don't go well for Ireland at the start of their campaign.
Possibly. Like, Lee Carsley's obviously constantly been linked with roles around Irish football. Does Lee Carsley want to be a senior international manager and all the pressure that comes with that? We just don't know. Like, when he's gone in before as manager of club sides, it generally hasn't lasted very long, and he seems to be someone who loves being on the training ground, who likes working with young players, who likes developing players. Does he want what is, you know, an incredibly pressurised job, being the senior international job, as pressurised a job as there is in this country? I'm not quite sure if that's what Lee Carsley sees his future as, but absolutely, if he's gone from that England role, and if there was to be a change of manager at some time over this year, I think he would definitely be front and centre. And I don't know what his wage demands are, but you would feel that Lee Carsley, going from an England under-21 manager, you know, would probably be within the FAI's reach, which will be quite a limited reach whenever Stephen Kenny does leave. So he'll certainly be in the mix. Like, his coaching CV and his reputation around being able to develop young players is as good as it gets. So you would love if there was some sort of a role at some stage for Lee Carsley. But, you know, Lee Carsley has lived in England all his life. Is he fully aware of everything that's going on at the underage coaching structures in Ireland to take on that sort of job? It would be a massive step back for him to leave England and for an underage role here. But maybe there's something in him that's always wanted that senior Ireland gig. And, you know, his CV at almost all levels of coaching is spot on. It's just that final bit of being the man in front of the media.
Is there another role in Irish football for Lee Carsley, like a technical
Well, most
director?
of those roles are currently filled. You know, they've made a lot of appointments over the last couple of years in those behind the scenes roles to try and strengthen things and to try and become that bit more modern. But you would hope that if Lee Carsley is available and if he's stepping away from England, again, if he's stepping away, if he's leaving that role, he must feel that there's something else out there for him that can satisfy him.
Okay, let's move on, because obviously we'll come back to the Republic of Ireland situation in a couple of minutes' time. If anybody wants to get anything off their chest, as I said, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or you can tweet us at OffTheBallAM. And we're live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. We should start with Cheltenham. I don't know if you got the opportunity. You were watching Cheltenham a good bit yesterday. So Constitution Hill romps home, and everybody's like, well, this is a wonder horse, you need to pay attention to this. And so the atmosphere is already pretty high, because Constitution Hill was 3-1 on, so that's unbackable, and yet everybody backs him. You know, like, loads of people are putting down 100 quid to win 30 back. And so there's a lot of risk involved in that, and so therefore when there's an emotional outpouring when a great horse like that absolutely dominates the field. But what's coming next is the end of Honeysuckle. You know, we've been told that this is the last race of Honeysuckle's career, and I think, I don't know if it was John or somebody else yesterday made the point that Honeysuckle was basically the breakout of Rachel Blackmore, where she went from being a cult hero amongst racing to being an absolute superstar. That, and obviously then, you know, winning a Gold Cup and winning a Grand National as well. But Honeysuckle and Rachel Blackmore are inextricably linked, particularly with the way that Honeysuckle would win at Leopardstown at Christmas, you know, just dominating around the bend and speeding up. Like, lay non-horse racing fans can go, that horse is running faster than everybody else, and absolutely crushing it. And constantly, again, will be odds on in those races and will always deliver, and has only been beaten twice, and it's this season. And so that's one part of it. And we know that this is the end of Honeysuckle, and so there's already there's already a lot of love for it. But then you layer in the absolute tragedy that the Bromhead family had suffered just this year, and the pressure that Rachel Blackmore must have been under to deliver. Particularly, I don't know if you watch the race, like there's a bit where she goes behind, and you're thinking this isn't going to happen. And there's a kind of a sharp intake of breath from the crowd, going, "Oh, we're so close to having this happen." And then for it just to happen, like you never get this in sport. Sport always lets you down with the fairy tale ending. We always go, "Oh, you couldn't script this. No one would believe it if you scripted this." And then it's like, but she wins. I don't know. I found it excessively emotional when the horse was winning, and they were speaking to everybody afterwards, and everybody was losing it. Everybody was losing it. Like in commentary, Ruby couldn't get the words out. But then in the midst of it all, Henry de Bromhead is calm and almost at peace and celebrating in a way that they're remarking that you never see them, but like, I don't know. I thought it was one of the all-time great sporting moments.
Yeah, like you even saw his other little son with him as well, which kind of added to the occasion and to the emotion. When you put the emotion aside before the race, a lot of the pundits are like, "Well, I don't think Honeysuckle's going to win here." Like I'd have to say, and I felt like a traitor, but I fancied Love Envoi, and for most of the race, Love Envoi was like, pushing ahead, was racing very well. But then you saw Honeysuckle come, and you're like, "This is going to be it. This is going to happen." But I don't know why we ever doubted Rachel Blackmore, or why anyone who didn't maybe back Honeysuckle yesterday or fancy her. And a measure of Rachel Blackmore's character was that she's straight away after the race being asked about the race and her thoughts straight away with Jack de Bromhead and with Henry and Heather, and like that's like literally the first thing she said. I think
it was, and I think that's because that's what the race was about. You know, like while the end of Honeysuckle, this Wonder Horse, was an amazing racing story, like, and you could tell that it was relief, not joy, that she was feeling at the end, because, like, you know, I think one of the things that Tyrone did whenever they had their tragedies, they were like, "Look, you can't try and win this for Cormac McDonnell this year, because you're not going to be able to carry the burden of that. You know, you can't do that, and it's impossible for people to carry the burden of winning something on behalf of somebody else who isn't themselves." And it took them a while to get through that grief. And you know, I'm sure you know, grief is different for everybody, but we always talk about this on the show, that we don't talk about it very well as a country. We're great at the old cursory stuff, but I've no doubt that she felt that she had to win that for the family and for everything that had happened this year. And so the pressure that you must put yourself under to get to that point, and then to be able to deliver, like,
again, like as you saw the photo of them up there on the screen at the start of the show, just four wins at Cheltenham for Honeysuckle, and straight away Rachel Blackmore was like, it'll be different without her here next year, and it will be. I mean, you saw the reception she was getting as she walked into the winners' enclosure and past the grandstand, and everyone, to a man and a woman, was feeling the emotion of the occasion. You could see it. Even AP McCoy, I saw people pointing out, was getting emotional on this punditry as well, and you just felt the lump in the throat watching it. It was one of those TV moments for anyone who wasn't there that you'll always remember, because I think even if you're not a horse racing fan, a lot of people in this country are Rachel Blackmore fans, or Honeysuckle fans possibly. So it was just one of those moments I think we'll never forget. I think it will be the highlight of the Cheltenham Festival. Johnny Ward was pointing out on Instagram yesterday, he thought it was the best day of the festival ever, and I think a lot of people maybe echoed those sentiments yesterday. So it was just incredible. From
I
the
think it showed what a tight-knit community the racing community is, the love and the support that was there for the de Bromhead family, and that the admiration you have to have for Henry de Bromhead and his family, and this very public grief that they're going through, that Henry de Bromhead was back on the racetrack very, very quickly after his son's passing. And every time there's a winner, the obvious question to ask is, was this one for Jack? And Henry has to answer them, and he talks so poignantly and he talks so brilliantly. And I'm sure, as you say, when you give that Tyrone comparison, he wasn't telling Rachel Blackmore, you know, go out and do this for this reason, because she simply couldn't. But for her to be able to somehow use that emotion in such a positive way, and I think it was one of the all-time great Cheltenham moments, the celebrations afterwards, as tinged as there were with sadness, I think everybody was at Cheltenham, and as good a day as everyone was having, they realised that this was something different, that this meant a little bit more than just a race, that for Irish racing, for the de Bromhead family, that this was right, that this is what should happen. And for Rachel Blackmore, for Honeysuckle on the sporting side, it's a real shame, because racing needs more Honeysuckles. There's probably not enough horses out there at the moment that have that level of name recognition that people go, all right, Honeysuckle's racing today, I'm going to go and watch this. Now maybe the one of the replacements came just beforehand in Constitution Hill, that with a performance of that magnitude. Now that's a horse that we're watching every time it arrives on the golf course, on the race course. But yeah, it was a remarkable hour of TV, and I can only imagine for those people that were there in the midst of it, it is going to go down as one of the great days of racing.
Before yesterday, Shane was making the point on air that he'd forgotten that there was Champions League action last night. I think the whole world basically had, particularly in the aftermath of that, certainly in this part of the world. And then Erling Haaland reminded everybody, this is why we signed you. We were having this conversation yesterday on the back of Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank about who the player of the year was, and I was trying tentatively to make the case, Erling Haaland's done what you'd expect him to do, and I've changed my mind. New evidence, new information came to light. New information.
He has done what you expected him to do, but maybe in its own way, that's what's quite remarkable about Erling Haaland. We all thought he was going to score 30, 40, 50, 60 goals this season, but to actually go and do it, like nobody has done what he has done this before for a Premier League side. So the way he was on it last night, like Manchester City were on it right from the start. This is the best we have seen of City in 3 or 4 months. De Bruyne, who's been just dogged by inconsistency ever since the World Cup, having had a poor World Cup right from day one. Maybe all these interviews he was doing during the week about being an old man, maybe Pep Guardiola having a little bit of a pop at him, telling him he needs to start going back to basics, all the anger came out last night. But like, there were some controversial moments in the first half and some absolutely disgraceful refereeing.
Yeah.
But Manchester City were back. Now, whether they can get that consistency to be back for the next 3 months and go and win everything, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Haaland, it was like a magnet. It was bizarre, wasn't it? That every time a shot was taken, the keeper would just push it back into his path. Well,
it would be helpful if you would like keep the ball away from the big lad who's like the best striker, most prolific goal scorer in the world at the moment. That would help. But before they were gifted the opening goal, they were missing chances on a big European night where everything is like up for grabs. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if they hadn't been gifted that, and maybe if their keeper had been punished properly for... I'm just saying, I'm not saying that they were going to lose a game they ultimately won at a canter and had wrapped up by half time, essentially. But I still think there's a flakiness in this Man City team where they needed that penalty to settle the nerves, because chance pinball, great shot, reasonable save, chance pinball wide. It's like, okay,
they then beat a good Leipzig team 7-0. Do you know? And Leipzig have been playing quite well.
Yeah, let's give them the penalty and let's not send the keeper off.
Oh, it definitely wasn't a penalty.
And the keeper had one of the worst performances you'll see at that level, in that maybe it was the power of the shots and he couldn't hold any of them, but everything just seemed to bounce back to a Manchester City player. You're right. It did feel when the penalty was given, it was inevitable that City were going to score, but you could argue in previous seasons it was inevitable lots of things were going to happen for Manchester City in the Champions League, and it didn't happen. The decision to give the penalty was an absolute joke. The decision to book Timo Werner for moaning after Ederson comes out. Now, is it a red card? They'll obviously say there was players back, but the goalkeeper's not in his goal.
No.
If he doesn't get there,
there's a risk.
These are very talented players. There's an absolute risk that Leipzig go and score. And while Pep Guardiola will take a lot of satisfaction with the 7-0, with Erling Haaland's performance, I think in particular with Kevin De Bruyne's performance, there was still that 5-minute spell where he went, these are the 5-minute spells that have killed Manchester City throughout Pep Guardiola's time. And while a lot of it was of their own undoing, again, Rodri with a sloppy back pass, Ederson rushing out of goals, just complete and utter panic for no reason for 5 minutes, where you thought, well, if Leipzig got a couple of goals here, suddenly all those things come back to haunt Manchester City. Now, that's what they're going to have to deal with and live with throughout this entire campaign, that lack of trust that people probably have in them from the outside. It's whether they also have that lack of trust in themselves, because this is the Pep Guardiola way. It's often spoken about, he doesn't like leaders on the pitch. He doesn't look for people to take control of situations. He is the man who decides absolutely everything, and that's why it ends up costing them. That's why they concede 2-3 goals in the space of 10 minutes in these matches, because there's nobody on the pitch who can just say, calm down. calm down and let's control this. And it did feel in that 5-minute spell again as though they just lost their heads.
They're so boring to watch at times, and Phil in the office this morning said it is like a PlayStation game at times for Erling Haaland. Like, I've heard him described as agricultural, and it definitely makes sense when you look at Erling Haaland. He plays like he turns every league into a farmers' league for a start, and he's turned the Champions League into the farmers' league. Taking the piss. It's like he was lambing yos last night. Had the big long glove on, and he was plucking goals out of that Leipzig net.
City were boring last night. There's games where City are boring and they play within themselves and they save their energy and they don't take any risks. And I always think it depends on De Bruyne. If he feels like
he's playing well,
City are on it, and he was as good as I've seen from him in a long, long time. You do have to remind yourself that De Bruyne is 31. He'll be 32 by the end of the summer, by the time we go into next season. Like, we are in the autumn of Kevin De Bruyne's career, and how they find someone to replace him is going to be very difficult. But like, they just bombarded the Leipzig penalty area with crosses, but it was the quality of his crosses from minute one that set the tone for that game. And
just to interrupt. I think the main thing is that he picked his normal team, his best team, didn't get in his own head. I think that's interesting. I think that there was no, we're going to be so clever here. It was like, okay, I'm going to pick the trio in midfield that I expect, and I'm going to pick my 3 forwards. Foden to come in to replace Silva or Grealish is a possibility at some point, but you're not thinking, he's completely changed the structure of the team here. He's gone with I don't know whatever weird selection it is. It's like, no, we're going to go out and win this game.
Still plenty of time.
There is.
Leipzig.
I'm not
ask the Etihad. I would give him time. Yeah, like there's a depth there in the 3 or 4 players, the first 3 or 4 players on the bench, that means you're never quite sure of the selection. I still always feel they're at their best if Mahrez is on the pitch, but maybe if Mahrez is there, you can't have De Bruyne in an advanced position. It takes too much away from his game. But like, one of the stories of City's season is that Phil Foden played every big game in recent years. Even when he was rested at times, if there was a big match in the Premier League or Champions League, Foden would generally come back in. But right now, Grealish is ahead of him. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. He deserves to be ahead of him from what we've seen from Grealish. Can he find a spot for the two of them together? Doesn't look likely, but again, what options to have off the bench?
Pep was in some form in his post-match press conference last night. Like, he was like, I have more info than the Twitter guys. I was right when he's talking about his team. And Julie Roberts, I don't know if you saw this, Nathan. Like, Julie Roberts comes up, but Pep brings her up. He's talking about 2016. So this is a quote from Pep last night, right? November 2016. So Julie Roberts has the same agent as Jose Mourinho, apparently, and her kids love football. November 2016, Julie Roberts goes to Old Trafford to watch United play West Ham.
CAA, it's a giant agency.
Massive agency, of course. There's a link there. Yeah. There's a link. Well, tentative as it might be. Pictured on the pitch afterwards.
George Mendes is not, or whoever was who was the guy, the Portuguese super agent that got Jose all the time before that? Wasn't there one?
Oh, yeah, there was one previous.
Anyway, go on.
But Pep brings Julie Roberts up last night. He says, I have 3 idols in my life: Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, and Julie Roberts. Julie Roberts years ago came to Manchester, not in the period of Alex Ferguson when they were winning titles after title, in the last 4 or 5 years when we were better than them. But she didn't come to see us. She went to visit Man United. Even if I win the Champions League, it will not ease the disappointment of Julie Roberts going to United, my idol.
Even if I win the Champions League 3 times in a row, he went on to say. Can I just want to, apropos of nothing, this is the plot to a movie. William Thacker is a London bookstore owner whose humdrum existence is thrown into romantic turmoil when famous American actress Anna Scott appears in his shop. A chance encounter over spilled orange juice leads to a kiss that blossoms into a full-blown affair. As the average bloke and glamorous movie star draw closer and closer together, they struggle to reconcile their radically different lifestyles in the name of love. Do you think Pep Guardiola, his daydream is not like, I wonder what would happen if I could pair Messi and Haaland? It's not. It's like, I wonder what would happen if Julia Roberts accidentally spilled some orange juice on me. I think we got an insight into...
He wants to be Hugh Grant in Notting Hill.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he's thinking about. The rest of the world is like, oh, Pep, you've got it. But he sees himself as like a humdrum bookstore. That's in his mind's eye. He's got a full head of hair and he's got a busy bookish shop.
Maybe it's the power of Charlie Wilson's War, her character in that. Or maybe it's Aaron Brockovich. We don't know what film exactly... Pep is a massive fan of.
We know exactly. He's in England, and he's like, I could be. This is
Sleeping with the Enemy.
I mean, I don't think so.
There's so many to choose from, but I would say, yeah, possibly Notting Hill.
With the Enemy is like serious domestic abuse.
Yeah,
line.
of course.
That's
Yeah, probably is Notting Hill, isn't it?
Absolutely. As Pep, inside of Pep's mind, he's Hugh
I don't
Grant.
think he sees himself as sort of George Clooney in Ocean's 11.
Oh, Ocean's 12, isn't it? Or is it both? Yeah,
Both.
fair point.
Can I?
What an
Where this
actress,
is going.
so yeah.
Martin Brownie's a good piece today. Ireland's Grand Slam bid should be in Croke Park. What do we think of this?
Bring in more money.
Why? They play at the Aviva.
Well, because you'd fit 30,000,
More
600
people
more
can get in.
people. Yeah.
No, the Aviva's their home stadium. It's not about just play where you play all the time.
No.
Don't be putting Ireland at a disadvantage.
It would no, to have more Irish fans in Croke Park.
No. They've been playing in a venue where they're not used to playing.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's fair
just
point.
get used to playing it. Go and let your kickers have a kick. We should play our big games in Croke Park. We should play our small games in the Aviva. We should make the Aviva suitable for Gaelic football so the Dubs can play their Leinster Championship games there. We should use the available resources properly. I'm in full agreement with this. I can't believe you think it's a bad idea.
Every rugby game is a big game.
It's not. We play Italy. It's
So
not
they-
a big game. We play
we play
with Scotland and Wales those years. I mean, if Wales are any good or
But they'd
Scotland are
sell
any good,
80,000 tickets for Scotland and Wales.
I don't think they would. Maybe
Yes,
they
they
would.
would.
I don't think they would. But well, if that's the case, then play them and let Leinster play in their games in the Aviva and let Munster play some games in the Aviva. And I think we should just be open to using our resources properly.
You've
I
only
think
3
it's
games.
fine to have several stadiums and to use them for the different sports. Just because a game is sold out, cracking atmosphere and tense atmosphere doesn't mean you need to move it to a bigger venue.
No, it doesn't.
Playing their Leinster Championship game in the Aviva.
It doesn't in well, why not? They can't fill
You're
Croke Park.
disgusted, Nathan.
Well, they won't be able to fill the Aviva either.
Well, I mean,
It'll be a novelty factor for the first one.
they'd have a better chance once. I don't know, Westmeath get
Also, the
good.
ball would end up going over that little stand.
Yeah, it's
So it
true.
doesn't in the rugby, so.
No, I think
They have nets, Nathan. They have big nets behind the goal.
you gotta control the controllables, don't you? You gotta have all your home games at the same pitch. I'd say, like, you only have max 3 home games in the Six Nations. So
Right.
I think moving it is ridiculous.
Liverpool and their prospect of a comeback tonight. 0-0-0-0-0. I mean, helpful of
1% is what Jurgen Klopp said.
Rafa is like, once they score early, the comeback is on. I'm like, shut up, Rafa. Shut up.
Yeah, well, that's the tried and tested method of this when you need 3 goals. That if you get one early, you can kind of get the second at any stage, and then you set yourself up for a grandstand finale and hope that you scrap one in somehow in injury time and you get it to extra time. Problem here for Liverpool isn't scoring the 3 goals. The problem is how they keep Real Madrid out without conceding. When defensively, again, against Bournemouth at the weekend, they were all over the place, and we saw what Real Madrid did to them at Anfield. So, like, maybe Liverpool go out all guns blazing and get themselves a few goals, but I don't think the Liverpool say to beat Barcelona, who could do that, who could go and attack, but still be solid defensively. Now, if Liverpool are pushing all those men forward without Henderson, who again I think is a massive loss, I can't see Liverpool not conceding if they have to push so many men forwards. But look, they've done it before. We've seen in the Champions League, insane things tend to happen every single season. But I don't think you can sit here 12 hours away from kickoff and make a pretty solid case for Liverpool coming back into this.
We have about a minute left. The Republic of Ireland squad is going to be named in the next 24 hours, I think, roughly, for the double header against Latvia and France. It looks like Shane Duffy probably not going to be in the squad. Are there any other big surprises?
No, it'll be interesting, I think, in terms of what new players he brings in. Like, Duffy is obviously in a bit of trouble. He hasn't been making the Fulham bench at times over the past few weeks. Has started 1 game since August, lost his place in the Ireland team in the autumn. And like, Kenny was very loyal to Duffy when Duffy struggled at Celtic, but when Stephen Kenny was talking last week, he admitted he had a lot to consider. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see him excluded, though maybe his ability to nick a goal in injury time off his arse gets him in, and he thinks I can throw him on against France if we're desperately stuck. But he has other options now. Andrew Omobandele is back fit. Up until a couple of weeks ago, he was playing week in, week out in the Norwich team. Hasn't been in the squad in a while, but you'd expect to be back in. Darragh Lenihan was playing last night again, every week for a really good Middlesbrough side. Has already started under Stephen Kenny against Ukraine last year. And then you've the likes of Jimmy Dunn, Mark McGuinness, who are playing every week in the Championship. So Duffy, while he's not playing, might find himself on the outside. The one who you'd expect to definitely come in is Mikey Johnson. The buzz around this from the FAI, like if Kylian Mbappe decided to take up Irish citizenship, I'm not sure the FAI would have been as excited as they were about Mikey Johnson. It has been daily updates about his eligibility. Constant press releases about getting his passport, being available, which suggests he'll certainly be in the squad. He is a name that will be very familiar to Celtic fans, made a Celtic debut at 18, hampered by injuries over the last couple of years. chatting to some people who've been working with him this week, and like they're saying, this is a real talent. Like,
Okay.
technically excellent, sharp, could beat players, could be a big asset for Ireland if he can get himself fully fit, because he's struggled massively. He's on loan in Portugal at the moment.
Okay.
He's getting plenty of minutes. So I think he'll be in the squad.
All right.
I think Will Smallbone, Mark Sykes, Sammy Smodzix will all be in the squad, but I think for them to break into the 11 against France, probably pushing it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million. It's 8
Cheers.
o'clock this morning. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. After this short break, we're going to talk with Keith Wood and Matt Dawson ahead of Ireland-England. First, here's Brian O'Driscoll chatting with Joe last night about Ireland's centres.
Presumably Henshaw is at 13 and that allays any fears of a repeat of Rome?
Yeah, and I think, with Robbie, he's accustomed in the 13 jersey, and he's one of those guys that you'd have no fear that has had a long layoff from a fitness point of view. I remember seeing him previously having had a long layoff, and his first game back with Leinster, he was close to player of the match.
Oh yeah, that was against the Ospreys in the Heineken Cup. Yeah,
he was outstanding, and I think he's just one of those guys. You wouldn't say that of everyone, but he's one of those guys that you wouldn't be any way fearful coming in. His engine is one of his great traits, and so and not to say there won't be the odd bit of rustiness here and there, but his footballing understanding, particularly defensively, is very, very strong. I wouldn't anticipate that he'll try and make as many reads as Gary has done in this Six Nations, but he'll have a very clear picture as to what way he wants to defend with Bundy, and obviously that partnership from his Connacht days is all important. So yeah, I don't think you do lose something on the confidence of what Gary's doing and how he's defending on behalf of the team. But I think, yeah, as a player, Robbie is we should be careful not to be the forgotten man. He's been an outstanding performer for Ireland over the course of the last 3 or 4 seasons, and for me, absolute automatic selection when fully fit.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. OTB GAA.
You don't just have a speech the Wednesday before a game. You go out and you rile up your team and go out and play the match with fire and brimstone. Now you analyse teams to death.
Lee Chin gave an exhibition yesterday. He ghosted around that field. Cork actually couldn't get a handle on him.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, to help preview Ireland and England, we're bringing the heat this morning. One's a former World Player of the Year, Ireland captain, one's a World Cup winner, and they were Lions teammates. I'm delighted to welcome Keith Wood and Matt Dawson to the show. Matt, we're feeling a little bit confident ahead of this game. How are you feeling at the moment?
I'm feeling really confident. Really confident. It's going to be a great weekend, and Ireland are going to win the Grand Slam.
Right,
I'm pretty confident of that.
Are you over to play the Legends match beforehand?
Absolutely not. No, I'm coming over Thursday. I've got a bit of work to do with 5 Live, but to be perfectly honest, I'm going to soak up every single minute of those 3 days, because it's for all the reasons that I'm sure that you've been speaking about over the last few days. It's going to be a very, very special weekend, and one that if you're a rugby fan, you want to be a part of.
You're one of the few people in the world who know what it's actually like to win a Grand Slam in Ireland, because it's never happened in our history before. But you guys managed it.
Do you know what? I put a call in to Steve Borthwick on Monday and just said, listen, just give yourself half a chance. And when you walk out, go and stand on the wrong side, stand on the Irish side, because that really upsets them. And you've got half a shot. I think it's listen, England of course are going to come out and they're going to be hurting from what happened against France, but to be perfectly honest, you can be hurting all you like. England don't really have the game plan to play against Ireland. I think Ireland will not be anywhere near complacent. I think they will be focused, they will be charged, they will be motivated to do something that no one in a green shirt has ever done before. And they just seem so cool and calm and collected at the moment. And if I may say, I feel like they're in a little bit of a zone that we were back 20 years ago, where it didn't matter what people threw at you. We were just ready to take it on, and we actually embraced the adversity. And Ireland look like that at the moment. They look like they're ready, and and good on them.
Yeah, Keith, I think that that's an excellent point, and it's the one that Andy Farrell has been talking about the whole way through, about looking forward to challenges. And this stretches all the way back to the week after they got beaten by New Zealand. That sense of, well, this is a big challenge for us. That's what we're in the game for. And, we were all sceptical about it at the start, but now I think everybody believes that, because the evidence is on the field of play. For a game like this, there's talk in the papers about complacency, but I guess to Matt's point, this isn't about complacency for the Ireland team at all. Their motivation is to go and make history, and that's the thing that's exciting them, it seems like.
I think the fact that it's in the papers about complacency is that there's an awful lot of pundits and reporters who have only ever dealt with that level of complacency in the past, and things have gone well, and I for me, the joy of watching the team kind of play and grow at the moment is there seems to be an unbelievable level of honesty coming from Andy Farrell. So where he's saying, he's appreciating the difficulties and the reaction that the team have to go through, and he's not castigating players for trying different things. He's still trying to get them to push their standard all the time, to go for the pass if the pass is on, and then to make the pass. But when those passes don't go to hand, or when a tackle is missed, I don't know that he's coming down on them like a ton of bricks. I think he's saying, we want you to try it, we want you to believe, and they're giving them the scope to have small minor failures in the midst of a game, So if you looked at our defensive setup for this Six Nations, we've missed more tackles than we ever have, but we're playing the most exciting style of rugby and we're winning, So I don't think that there's complacency within the team at all. I think there's an expectation that they go out, start fast and play well all the way to 80. They look very fit. They look very strong. It's not a worry, but the disruption of losing a chunk of players last week, which worked fantastic on the day, we now have a full week where we're trying to integrate other players in. But for me, the system is strong enough to take it. But I don't think it'll be quite as much of a walkover as some of the people who are half confused with the idea of complacency, and then the fact that this is an international match that they'll win by 30 points easily. There's a quite interesting confusion in some of the commentary.
Yeah, Matt, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk to you about. One is the imprints of Stuart Lancaster, and obviously the fact that Andy Farrell is an Englishman, and we have Mike Catt involved as well. Is there any sense in English rugby that somehow this is a brains trust that got away?
Do you know what? There hasn't been that narrative actually in English rugby around that yet. I'm sure that when Ireland come up with the goods at the weekend, then that will be mentioned. But no, it's not really been a story. Plenty of English coaches or English ex-players and coaches have gone to international rugby. I think if anything, it's more of a story for those coaches rather than the public. I think that there was Lancaster, Farrell, Catt particularly. He was a colleague of Keith and ours from the Lions tours. He has got such an unbelievable brain in the game, but has never been able to really lay it out there in an environment that Keith was talking about there, in an environment where the consequences weren't necessarily managed to an inch of their lives. And I think now that it doesn't actually matter where the coaches come from. I mean, listen, Ireland have had New Zealand coaches, Ireland coaches, English coaches previously. I think it's the mindset is so connected between what the players want to do when they go on the field, and the types of coaches that they are. They're players, coaches, not management coaches. As I say, they're probably, given what could happen at the weekend, I think that narrative might well take over. So you potentially have sparked up yet another reason for the English media to jump on their backs, and maybe the RFU should have kept the likes of Andy Farrell and Mike Catt and Stuart Lancaster. But they're doing a great job. I'm very, very proud of to see what they can do, because it sets the benchmark. And England need to find a benchmark pretty quick.
Matt, we were talking about this yesterday. Jack Van Poortvliet came up at scrum half, and Matt Williams was making the point that he didn't feel like he was up to international standards just yet. I know you were writing about this week with your column on BBC Sport. How many of this English team, if any, are world class at the moment? Because it feels like the first time in a generation where maybe they're struggling for any in that bracket.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are no players in that team that are world class at the moment. There are a handful of players in that squad that have been world class and have the capabilities of being world class, but they're absolutely not there at the moment. I think there's a misconception that you can generalise really good play by saying you're world class. Well, world class effectively means if there's a world 15, you're in it. And there is not a chance there is anyone from that England side being in a world 15. To answer your question on Jack Van Poortvliet, there's a good case study where, I watch a lot of Premiership rugby, and I've never seen Jack Van Poortvliet play like that. He has been, his game has been somewhat drawn out of him because of the way that England want the style to be. And not that I have spoken to him, but if I did, I would say, listen, mate, go back to how you play at Leicester. Give pace in the game, be a threat around the fringes. Put pressure on your fellow players to play in an intensity and a decision-making intensity that the opposition are going to struggle at. Everybody in the world can deal with, one phase and a box kick. And are you going to do that to Hugo Keenan? Absolutely no chance. You're going to get ripped apart. So it's just a matter of those England players gaining a bit more confidence about how they play week to week and coming up with a strategy, which is going to take time. That's not going to happen in a week before they go to Dublin. No chance.
Keith, from an Ireland perspective, obviously we lost both our hookers early in the game, and then Cian Healy comes on and plays. Can you talk to us a little bit about your admiration for what Healy managed to do, and then I presume it's Herring back this week. So first off, Healy, what did you make of that?
Look, there's a variety of pieces on that. For one, A, Healy's an incredible professional. B, the fact that they had him marked down as a hooker shows a fine sense of forethought, because you have to be marked as one to be able to be safe for insurance reasons, actually, that you have to be able to play in that position. And the fact that he'd be able to do it. Now, I would have played against 3 prop front rows back in the day. That was a big Argentinian thing. It was a French thing for quite a while in the early 90s. So it can be done. And the game has changed a little so that the striking isn't quite as far-reaching as it used to be. The ball goes in a little bit more crooked than it used to in our day. But to raise your foot at all for a prop under pressure in the middle of a scrum is terrifying. So, it's an extraordinary thing to do. I mean, we used to do it every now and then. We put the backs into the front row just to show how hard it was that we had to work for them not to knock on the ball in the back line. But just for pressure, without pushing, the pressure that goes down on the neck when you're going to strike the ball is terrifying if you're not used to it. And it takes a while to get used to. It took him 1 scrum. So for that, it's pretty extraordinary. I loved the thinking that went on, the prep that was done so that a player can go into the scrum and feel confident. Of course, when it went on to the opposition ball, he was just, it's like he's a huge beast of a man. So he's in a great position to push straight and push hard and put the team under pressure. So I thought our scrum actually got stronger when he went in, and that's a very unusual thing. I did send him a message afterwards and welcomed him to the club, but it's a funny, again, it's just a rare thing that you see. And for me, it opens up a whole variety of unusual questions that I would never have liked to have opened up when I was playing. Do you have to have the hooker throwing the ball into the line-out? Because Van der Fleer threw incredibly well. And can you have different players playing in different positions? It's, that have different sizes or skill sets. But on this one day, the results were phenomenal, because if it went to uncontested scrums, that takes a lot of pressure off a team that's trying to chase a game, and that never happened.
What about Herring? Do we lose much if Herring starts next weekend?
No, I'm a fan of Herring. I'm not a fan of him by comparison to Sheehan or Kelleher. I think Sheehan is world class, actually. I think he has the touches to be one of the absolute greats in the game. I don't know what the story is with his injury. I think Kelleher seems to be out definitely. Herring is not as powerful, but is accurate in the line out. He's a really good international player. I mean, we're well served, and we hadn't been for a period of time. We only ever had one or two, maybe one injury away from almost panic stations. But now we have Herring, I think, and if Sheehan isn't there, maybe Stewart, two guys from Ulster coming into it, so that might happen. So no, I wouldn't worry about that at all. If we were talking about the team, and it'd be interesting whether Matt has a view on this, but for me, the biggest change looking at Ireland this year is that there is a structure that people can fit into that doesn't depend on you being taking on a mantle of a playmaker, or a mantle of where you have to be at 100% straight away. There's about 4 or 5 different options nearly for every pass at the moment. I haven't seen that for a while. So when players are training in that system for 6 or 7 weeks and they drop into it, you can change players. So I thought Ross Byrne came onto the field the other day and looked at his most comfortable in an unbelievably difficult match.
Yeah, Matt, was that one of the hallmarks of your team when you were at the level that was competing and winning a World Cup?
Yeah, it's I certainly do see a lot of similarities that or a lot of the sort of methodology of Ireland at the moment, and their strategy from when I was, all those years ago. It sort of feels to me that when I watch Ireland, they're like they sort of have this military precision in the way that they play, and as Keith alluded to there, just that everybody can slot into every single position and they know exactly where they are, and all the uniforms are beautifully positioned and boots polished, and it looks so neat, and everybody is moving in unison with one another, and it's just it feels to me that they go on the field with no arrogance, but an absolute confidence that if they just do what they're supposed to do, they're going to get themselves into positions to score. And that probably then leads towards what Keith's talking about, is those individual playmakers that maybe Ireland have had in the past that stand out, Keith being one of them, Brian O'Driscoll being another, Johnny Sexton in his early years. Whereas now they are all at such an incredible level, and they all sit in this brilliant regime, which gives them a flexibility to do what they need to do, but also what they want to do. But it really does has a feel of it. And usually this sounds really negative, it's sort of mechanical, robotic. But it's as if they've found the new human robot that can do a breakdance and as well as sit down and have dinner and do all the mannerisms you possibly want. It's so well oiled. I genuinely can't see anyone other than France on a crazy day in Paris pushing them at the moment. It's going to be difficult to keep that over the next 6 months, of course. But right now they're the real deal for sure.
2 quick questions about England before we let you go, Matt. The the Tuilagi is a ghost for Ireland because every time he's played us, he has beaten us. He's literally, it was his physicality that caused the injury that ended David Wallace's career. They smashed us when 4 years ago when we thought, oh, we're going to roll into the Six Nations and head off to Japan and be really happy. He just came on the first throw in at a line out, smashed our midfield. There was a knock on. The game was over at Lansdowne Road, and it's like, oh my God, he's back. He's back this weekend. One player can't entirely change anything, but suddenly there's something for England to hang their hat on.
Well, I mean, if Mano was fit, then he would probably play because England do need momentum. They do need something that is going to change the picture for the referee, for the opposition, for them to be concerned about. So I would expect Manu to maybe come in and cause a little bit of damage early on, but I'm not sure that's enough against the Ireland side. I think you've given a couple of examples there where in years gone by that may have sort of ruffled the feathers and have discombobulated the Ireland team to a point but I just can't see that happening. I mean, I'd love it to happen. Don't get me wrong. I mean, bringing Manu back and giving England that kickstart and gathering all of that energy and passion that England need to have when they play away from home. But from what I've seen from Ireland at the moment, they'll probably soak it up and take all that energy out of England and move somewhere else.
And the other one was about Billy Vunipola. Do you think he would improve the team if he was in the squad at the moment?
The number 8 discussion is a long one. I've been away for a couple of days, and that keeps on cropping up with everybody who wants to talk to me about English rugby. Alex John Brad did not have a good day at the office. He has he's got plenty of things to prove if he wants to say that he's the number 8 for England at that type of intensity. Who on earth do England then pick? Do they pick Sam Simmons? Do they put Ludlam at 8? Do you bring back Billy Vunipola, who from all accounts has had a bit of a falling out with Steve Borthwick? Is Steve Borthwick going to put that aside just for one game? I'm not too sure. There is not a depth of number 8s coming through that are of the quality of Ireland, France, New Zealand, South Africa. That and as Keith knows just as much as I do, your number 8 is a real barometer, like the hooker, like the number 8, like your fullback. It's a real barometer of how you play and the intensity that you play. And I mean, as you identified, that is one position that needs something. So maybe Billy is the man. He's not played international rugby for a while, but it's all hands on deck. It's whatever you can possibly do to get yourself through 80 minutes and try and scrape a win or try and scrape a performance. Even that hurts by saying it. But if England perform well at the weekend, that might be enough. I mean, that's ridiculous for me to say that even if England don't win but they perform, that might be enough for this team. That hurts, but it might well be the case.
Yeah, Keith, listening to that, Ireland should win this game. What's your prediction?
Yeah, look, I just want to touch on one bit from Matt. I think England have been fairly destabilised by having players picked and dropped with huge regularity over the last number of years. There hasn't been that consistency of selection. And at times we've criticised Andy Farrell that he hasn't made enough changes. But he has built the system that now the changes can fit in without it being destabilising. And that's been the difference. So for me, when I look at this game then at the weekend, I've loved the last 2 performances. They've been very different, but I've loved them for what they were. There was a 12-minute period in the second half the other day, the start of the second half. It was the slowest 12 minutes I can remember ever watching, whether that was just anticipation or what was going on in the field. But it was an amazingly intense game of rugby and a great game of rugby. We picked up a lot of injuries from it, but I thought the manner in which we won led to this weekend. So Like a lot still comes down to additional injuries, still comes down to yellow cards and red cards. And I think our discipline has been very, very good. And that's one thing that kind of takes a little bit of the energy, or gives us a little bit more energy, that our discipline has been very good with it. I think it'll be a really, really tough. England can't change how they're playing. They're going to kick an awful lot of ball. They're going to try and carry the ball a lot heavier and harder and try and poke holes in it, because to change into a wider, expansive game at the moment with a team with a very low confidence level doesn't seem likely. So they're going to try and do their game plan, but do it better than they have at a higher intensity. That will cause damage at different times, but I do think Ireland will be able to withhold it. So I think we win. I think we win by sort of 10, 12 points. Not 20 points, 30 points, 40 points, the way people are presuming will automatically happen. This is the last game of the Six Nations. This is a huge game for us. I hope we play with the same level of ambition. And our ambition is to score tries as often as we possibly can. But I expect England to have their best performance of the year. Because I think that they have the pride will be to do it. I think it was a chastening experience for them last weekend.
Final word to you, Matt. What's your prediction?
I would take 10, 12 points all day long. I think that would be a good performance for England to get within 10 of Ireland right now. It will all be down to the last probably 20, 25 minutes. If Ireland are in good control of the game and the scoreboard, then as we saw at the weekend, have England got the fitness, have England got the mindset to hang on and really dig in for 25 minutes, and the way that Ireland are so clinical, it could be, more towards 20 points win. But I do lean more towards what Keith's saying there. I think just the occasion is going to be so intense for both sides. It's more than likely going to be tight, but I'll say Ireland by 15.
Gents, great to have you with us. Former Lions teammates Keith Wood and Matt Dawson, thanks a million for joining us today, folks.
Cheers, gents.
Pleasure.
It's 26 minutes past 8. I think the England team is going to be really interesting because I think they're going to pick potentially... Ford is getting a lot of talk in the papers today again. I don't know if that's people on a flyer, but you wouldn't be terribly surprised. They pick Ford at 10, Farrell at 12, Tuilagi at 13.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's a much beefed up England team, which is completely different from the team that played, the team of kids who played against France at the weekend. And that defence will be much more aggressive and physical. And all of a sudden you can see that being... Again, where they kick the leather off the ball, try and put some pressure on Herring's throws, attack our line out early, and see what happens. Because they don't have anything else at the moment.
Well, that's
so early in their evolution.
Like England have to pinpoint Irish weaknesses, but the problem is where are the Irish weaknesses? I mean, like to hear Matt saying there that or was it Keith saying that they expect the biggest English performance of the year, and yet we're talking about a spread in the bookies of 16 points. I think it is. Like that is quite remarkable. To be sitting here on a Grand Slam decider this weekend and people saying Ireland will win by 20 points, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that we might end up winning this with a skittery drop goal in the last few minutes.
Do you think it'll be that tight?
I think it'll be much tighter than we expect it to be because there's a big fight that happens first before you decide who wins, and so there could be all sorts of chaos. If you're England, you're just trying to cause chaos, get somebody sent off, get somebody sin-binned, rile them up. Maro Itoje, at the bottom of a ruck.
Throw him in.
Ireland have traditionally had a little bit of a problem with him.
Anyway, does Borthwick want that chaos? I don't know. He has decisions to make. Do you make loads of wholesale changes after a game like last weekend? I don't know. Maybe you stick with it.
Give us your views. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on youtube.com/offtheball. If you want to leave a comment, you need to be subscribed. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can always tweet us at offtheball AM as well. I'm delighted to say Jonathan Wilson is with us. Jonathan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
We're trying to make sense of what happened with Manchester City last night. Are they now the automatic favourites for this competition, given that they've unleashed in Europe exactly what they wanted to do? Or is this just a result and the next round will be totally different?
I'm going to give you the cowardly answer and say both. I think they're already probably the favourites. I think Napoli are the team playing the best football in Europe, but Napoli have never been to the quarterfinals of either the European Cup or the Champions League, so it's completely new territory for them. City, I think, in a season when a lot of top clubs have, maybe because of the World Cup, maybe for other reasons, have struggled, I think City were the favourites anyway. The ease with which they dispatched Leipzig in the end, I think it's hugely to their credit, and obviously bolsters those credentials. However, we have seen them win games very comfortably before, and then they slip up. And I think my feeling with last night's game, I suspect, is different to a lot of people's, which is that yes, Haaland's goal scoring was amazing. The De Bruyne I thought was excellent. John Stones I thought had a great game at right back, moving to midfield. And actually, to be honest, the Haaland issue, we knew he was a brilliant goal scorer. I'm not sure it taught us that much more. De Bruyne returning to form, I think, is more significant. Stones being able to play that sort of tucked-in fullback role, I think, is potentially more significant. But actually, for me, the most important thing is that of the 5 Haaland goals, 4 of them came from corners. And City are not a team you would previously... I mean, okay, one of them a penalty following a corner, but 4 corners essentially leading to goals. City are not a team you previously would have thought of as big, strong from set pieces. So if they have that extra arrow in their quiver, then that's a very, very positive thing for them in tighter games going forward.
One of the points I was making earlier on in the programme was that he also just picked the obvious team, which has not always been the hallmark of Pep Guardiola in the Champions League.
Yeah, the obvious team, and yet he was still able to leave out Foden and Mahrez, which tells you how great their squad is. And I think one of the problems City have, it's not a problem, but one of the features of City is their squad is so good that there is not really an obvious team. This was one of multiple obvious teams. But yeah, it wasn't tricksy, it wasn't over clever. But even then, we say that, and you're right. You didn't look at that team and think, "Oh Christ, what's he done here?" Mm-hmm. But it was 4 centre backs across the back. I mean, okay, John Stones is not a Tony Pulis style centre back, but that's interesting. That this a coach who sort of 3 or 4 years ago you just said his ideal team would have been 10 fullbacks and a goalkeeper. Suddenly picking a team with no fullbacks, that he's redefined the role of a fullback to such an extent that they're no longer fullbacks. We are continually seeing that evolution.
Sorry, that's an excellent point. I guess I meant that he picked Gundogan and Rodri and a front 3. Well, okay, so he managed to fit De Bruyne and Silva and Haaland and Grealish in the team, and it looks like that shape is perfect. But to go back to the four centre backs, is this going to be them for the rest of the season, do you think, or what's behind that? Was it I don't know. Is he disciplining Kyle Walker at the moment for his off-field activities, or is there he thought that was the right thing to do against Leipzig?
Well, I think Walker's form has not been great since the World Cup, so I think it's probably a combination of he's not playing particularly well, plus the off-field stuff. Left backs, he's got Gomez, but very inexperienced, and he doesn't actually have any left backs because he sold them all. He sold Zinchenko and then sold Jao Cancelo for whatever reason in January. So to an extent, maybe this has been forced upon him. But I thought the way Stones played that role, he obviously doesn't have the pace of Walker. He doesn't get forward quite in the same way that Walker does. But I think one of the things Guardiola really wants, one of the reasons he needs his fullbacks or a fullback to tuck into midfield and become a holding midfielder when in possession, is he's paranoid about getting caught on the break. And whenever things go wrong for City, it's because they've got caught on the break or because they've overcomplicated things by trying not to be caught on the break. If Stones can fulfil that holding midfield / fullback role, then that I think helps counter that fear. The one thing I would say about last night's game, look, I mean 7-0, you can't pick holes in it really, but they did get 3 big refereeing decisions went their way, which set the tone for the game, and then Leipzig sort of fell apart. So
I don't think that's nothing, by the way, because they were like, so everybody's like, oh, it was an overwhelming body of evidence to suggest they were going to win the game. There was, but in all the games that they've lost, they've missed a load of chances early on, and something has kind of inside them gone, oh, this isn't going to be our night, a constriction around the throat, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, Pep overthought it again. Yeah, and even the first game in Leipzig, very, very comfortable first half. If you had a criticism in that first half, it was they weren't ruthless enough. It was, they had Leipzig rattled and they didn't really sort of go for it. In the same way I criticised Bayern in the first half, in the first leg against PSG, that I think a really, really, really good team recognises when the opponents have lost it and kills them off for 2 or 3 goals then. And City didn't do that, and Leipzig were much better second half. I don't want to make too much of refereeing decisions because I think Henriks was incredibly unfortunate with that handball. But having said that, he got away with a blatant handball in injury time in the first leg. The way Haaland clipped the keeper as he closed him down in the build of the second goal, I'm not sure that is a foul, but it is something you do see getting given as a foul sometimes. So again, I don't want to say that it's a horrendous decision, but it's a big decision that went their way that might not have done. I actually think the one that they really got away with was Ederson. Yeah. Who was it he clattered? But I mean, keepers do get away with that kind of thing, but that was a bad challenge. And whether he brushed the ball or not, he's absolutely clattered through the man. And you think back the Liverpool City game where there was we're talking 4 years ago now, the 5-0, when a very similar incident, essentially a collision, 2 players running together, and it was Mane got sent off in that situation, wasn't it? But I think there's a recklessness to that challenge that could easily have been a red card another night. So once they got ahead, once Leipzig started to wobble, City were absolutely brilliant, absolutely ruthless. And as I say, I think the set plays issue is a big thing. I think Stone's issue is a big thing. But I'm not sure it was the overwhelming 7-0 that it's been portrayed by some people this morning.
Jonathan, there seems to be almost an element of smugness about Pep Guardiola in his post-match, talking about the decisions he's had to make, whether it's Foden or leaving out Mahrez, as you say, and these decisions coming up trumps. Like he even referenced Bernardo Silva on the left as well. But certainly these calls he's making are working at the moment, and even leaving De Bruyne out for a game and then him coming back in last night and having a game like he did, and the impact on the game that he did. Clearly some of these decisions right now are working.
Yeah, and I don't mind a manager saying I got it right. They get enough criticism when they get it wrong. So I'd far rather they sound slightly smug in explaining what they did than refuse to talk about it. So I don't really begrudge anybody that. Yeah, he got it right. I think the treatment of De Bruyne is really interesting. That the specific criticism he made that yes, he's creating chances, but he's not holding the ball well enough. I think that is still, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about his paranoia about getting done on the break. And I think this issue of control is still the big issue for City. Because for all that now, the talk this morning is, Haaland, how can you possibly say he's made them worse? Well, I don't think it's a question of making them worse, but it's a question of making them different. So if you extrapolate from the 26 games they played in the league this season and assume they'll go on the same rate, they would score 94 goals. Well, last season they scored 99. So they added a great goal scorer and they're on course to score 5 goals fewer. Even more worrying than that, much more worrying than that, last season they conceded 26 goals. This season they're on course to concede 35. So they have become more open. And I think that's an understandable consequence of having a player like Haaland who needs the ball earlier. If you're playing the ball earlier, you're necessarily playing more risky passes. You're not set to deal with a counter should that ball be lost. And so I think it's interesting that that's the criticism that Guardiola is making, that he's saying, yeah, De Bruyne is still making these passes. He is still creating the chances. But the consequence of the speed with which he's playing those passes is that it leaves City a bit more open. He is giving the ball away a bit more. I think getting that balance right, the risk-reward element of it, I think that is still the issue that City haven't necessarily quite worked out yet, and it's something they're going through. And I think it's why we've seen some of their recent league games have been pretty stodgy. That game at Palace at the weekend, where, they were comfortably the better side, fully deserved the win. but it was a real grinding 1-0 from a game that in the past you might have expected them to win maybe 3 or 4-0. And I think they are still just trying to work out, how do you accommodate Haaland? How do you get the ball forward to him as quickly as he needs it, while still retaining the capacity to deal with a potential counter-attack?
I'm not for a minute suggesting Man City aren't capable of challenging on a number of fronts, but when you look at the fact that they have, the FA Cup still to play, the Champions League being an obsession for Pep Guardiola at this stage to win it with City, whereas Arsenal have, the Europa League, of course they want to win it, and a bit of silverware would be nice, but the Premier League is going to be their sole major focus, you'd imagine, between now and the end of the season. Are Arsenal at an advantage compared to Man City, do you feel, Jonathan, in terms of challenging on a number of fronts?
I think the advantage they might have is they get to play in the league this weekend, and if they win that, they're 8 points clear. And okay, they played a game more, but what that means is, City obviously have the FA Cup game against Burnley this weekend. What that means is that City know they can't slip up, and I it's one of those things that shouldn't make a difference. But I think you talk to players, and they always sort of say, partly they say, "Oh, we're just focusing on ourselves," but they also sort of let on that, it's easier to play at the same time as the opponent because you're not sort of aware that, right, there's no space for slipping up here. I think it's easier to focus on your own game when you don't know what the opponent's done. So for Arsenal to get that 8 point lead, it's in the same way that when Arsenal were only 2 points clear, even though they had a game in hand, that didn't feel anywhere near as secure as 5 points. Well, 8 points having played a game more feels a lot more secure than 5 points having played the same number. So if Arsenal win this weekend, I think that does add to their advantage, yeah.
The point you make about City still trying to work out exactly how to get the balance right between their risk of being more open and the goals that might come if they manage to unlock this. It's really interesting to watch that unfold in real time, because we are watching one of the world's great managers wrestle with the fact that he has this shiny new toy that he knows is really, really important if he can just make it work. And that's the challenge for him for the rest of the season. If he gets that right, then there's a good chance that they reach a Champions League final, and what happens in the night happens in the night. But I guess that's the big imponderable that we're going to be watching for every game, to see, has he tweaked it? Is he getting the balance more in favour of being able to hit last season's goal tally without conceding more? Are we watching a great experiment unfold before our eyes?
Yeah, I think. Experiment maybe is not quite the right word, because that makes it sound a lot riskier than it is. But we are seeing a manager working through a problem. A great manager, one of the greatest thinkers about football has ever been, working through an issue, and it's fascinating to see. And you can sort of, it's a real privilege to see it in real time. But right from the Community Shield, you could see, it's very obvious that game, we're not getting the ball forward enough quickly enough. And then I think it was it West Ham they played the first week of the Premier League season, and Haaland did get the 2 goals, or he did seem to be going forward a bit quicker. But then we've seen that's left them open, and opponents have started to work that out. You have to counter that, and we're still in that process of flux. And I think it's really interesting to see a manager like Guardiola sort of really wrestling with his principles. His principles are not to play those long balls, not to play those long passes, and yet he's being forced to do it. And early on, the score was still 0-0 when it happened. I think it was probably 8-10 minutes in yesterday. And it was Nathan Ake played a pass, 60-70 yard pass over the top, and Haaland ran onto it and got a toe to it, and the keeper made quite a good save. And that's not the sort of chance that City would have been creating the previous 5 years that Guardiola's been there. So they have changed. And I guess it is a case of having this new weapon, a weapon that can really hurt opponents, that makes it really complicated for opponents, because if you sit deep, he'll win headers against you. If you push up, he'll hit the space behind you. But at the same time, it slightly disrupts the patterns and the passing flow and the domination of possession, which has been City's characteristic, which has been Guardiola's characteristic right since he became a manager in 2008. And balancing those two things off. And I think Guardiola is such an ideological manager, and I think that's natural for somebody who came through at Barcelona. You've seen Xavi talking in much the same way, that he has this idea, his strictures of football, his rules of football, it's sort of a quasi-religion that you cannot be heretical from this. This is the one true way of playing. And then he gets this other way of playing, and he's somehow having to adapt those principles. And there must be part of him that thinks, just whack it. If we're struggling, whack it over the top, whack it over the top. It doesn't have to be a good ball. You think of the goal he scored Was it the third goal they scored against Villa when Callum Chambers under very little pressure just heads the ball to nowhere and creates a chance just because a ball was within 20 yards of Haaland? You can do that. And yet Guardiola, all his footballing principles are telling him not to do that. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to watch him working that through and trying to communicate that idea, his understanding of that to his team. And De Bruyne is the most important player in that because he is the brains of the side. In a very intelligent side, he is the brains of it. And Guardiola clearly feels that De Bruyne's interpretation of that is slightly deviated from what he would like. And De Bruyne at the same time, I think, has had a bit of a post-World Cup blip. Yeah, anybody who saw him at the World Cup saw how frustrated he was with the way Belgium played. That interview he gave after the Canada game when he got man of the match and was incredibly grumpy about being made man of the match. So, I didn't deserve it. I was rubbish today. We were all rubbish. And I think he's come back with a bit of a sulk still on. And Guardiola's having to work through those issues of character and temperament as well. And that, I think, is not something Guardiola finds easy. I don't think he's the world's most natural man manager.
Jonathan, I, like many other football fans, like to pride myself every 4 years in watching as many World Cup matches as I possibly can, sitting down and soaking it all in. 2026, they're not making it easy, are they? I mean, what is it, 104 matches, 12 groups of 4 teams. So, I mean, the amount of football in 2026 is just going to be ridiculous. What are your thoughts on this extended tournament?
It's just gloom. I mean, a 39-day tournament, I think, is what they're talking about. It's a long, long time. I mean, look, I'm talking about this entirely selfishly to start with. As a journalist, a World Cup, and you have to go for a couple of days beforehand, and you leave sort of a day or two afterwards. So the World Cup was already 5 weeks. Now it's going to be 6 weeks, maybe slightly more. That's an incredibly grueling thing. You work every day. You work 16, 18 hours a day. It destroys you. And you saw with this World Cup, I'm only a journalist now, I shouldn't be doing this, but loads of journalists were ill and loads of journalists have struggled to recover post-World Cup. So God knows what it's like for players. Every tournament is getting bigger. Champions League, we're adding games to it. The World Club Championship, we're adding games to it. The Euros have added games to it. The African Cup of Nations have added games to. Players will break down. Journalists will break down. Nobody cares about that, but people will break down. But also 104 games. Yeah, I find 64 games is just beyond my capacity. I'm very enthusiastic at the beginning of the groups. Towards the end of the groups, my enthusiasm wanes a bit. Apart from those games that actually mean something. And of course, the problem is there are going to be far fewer of them because of the games that mean something. Because if you win your first 2 games, you're through. There's far less jeopardy for teams. So I hate the format, and I think at some point you've got to stop expanding. You've got to say, look, no. I'm sorry, it's not for everybody. Some teams will not qualify, and there has to be an element that this is the elite. Now, you may want to rejig qualifying slightly, and maybe you create more intercontinental playoffs. Maybe that's a way to sort of open it up so you get more African or Asian or CONCACAF teams there. That you don't have half the CONMEBOL teams naturally getting through. Maybe there's scope to tweak that, but just making it bigger. Yeah, I'm somebody who loves football, who makes money. The more football there is, the more money I make because I get paid to watch it and to write about it and think about it. And I'm approaching this with a sense of exhaustion. I think a lot of. I mean, okay, there are keen fans who will watch everything, but there's going to be a lot of fans who find, as with the Cricket World Cup, that their enthusiasm sort of sags a bit in the middle. And I think there'll be a lot of people who end up, rather than trying to watch every game, just sort of think, I'll catch up with that later just because I don't have the bandwidth to this. Yeah. So, but my bigger problem is the 8 best third place teams going through. I just think that takes away a huge element of the jeopardy. It's also just the absurdity of the blatantness with which Infantino says one thing one day and another thing the next. It's all such obvious nonsense that, Qatar was the greatest World Cup ever, but we're going to rip up that format and do something completely different. Well, if it was the greatest World Cup ever, just do the same thing again, rather than making it bigger, diluting it, bloating it, and just leaving everybody shattered.
Jonathan.
Not looking forward to it.
Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. You were great with your time. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
It's Jonathan Wilson. Always great to have him on the show. It's 8:48. Cathal is here to give us an update on what's going on. Cathal, how are you?
Morning, lads. How's it going? All well. I suppose Erling Haaland, the big story from last night, 5 times on the mark in City's 7-0 demolition of RB Leipzig.
You forget he's 22.
It's ridiculous.
Well, I was just looking through all the records that he's broken, and he's broken the Man City season scoring record already, and it's only March. With, 15, 20 games left in the season. And that's a record that stood for nigh on 100 years. So it's hard to believe, really.
It's like we were touching on Jack Van Poortvliet earlier with Matt Dawson, the English scrum half, and I was like, I felt bad. I feel bad all the criticism being directed his way. But then I remember, because he's 21, but then I remember Haaland's 22.
Yeah.
He's a kid as well, essentially. And yet he's tearing up the biggest European club competition.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. So City through to the quarterfinals. Inter are there as well. They had a goalless draw away to Porto last night. They were 1-0 winners on aggregate in that tie. So Liverpool tonight trying to come back from 5-2 down against Real Madrid. Jurgen Klopp suggesting that they have a 1% chance. So some chance, but not too big a chance according to Jurgen Klopp in that game tonight. That one kicks off at 8, and the other game is Napoli against Eintracht Frankfurt. Napoli have a 2-0 advantage in that tie after the first leg. In the Premier League tonight, Southampton could move out of the relegation zone if they win at home to Brentford, and Brighton could go level on points with Liverpool with a win at home to Crystal Palace. And in the WSL tonight, a big game at the bottom as Leicester take on Tottenham. The racing, you'll be talking to John in just a second, but lots to look forward to on day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival. The Champion Chase is the feature at 3:30. The action gets underway at 1:30 this afternoon. And in Gaelic games, a blow for the Tipperary hurlers. They're going well in the National League, but Seamus Callanan has been ruled out for 6 to 8 weeks. That's with a medial knee ligament injury he sustained in their win over Waterford at the weekend. Tip play Clare in their opening championship match in the Munster Championship on April the 23rd. They face Cork a fortnight later, so Callanan in a race to be fit for the championship, it looks like, at this stage.
All right, Carl, good stuff. More from Carl across today. Of course, it is 8:50. Time for us to turn to Cheltenham.
And they're all. Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
John Duggan is back with us. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, good morning.
Yesterday we spoke about the anticipation at the start of the day, but really it was towards the end of the day when Constitution Hill won, but followed, I think, by, I made the case earlier, one of the all-time great moments in Irish sport, the end of Honeysuckle's Cheltenham career, and victory for Henry de Bromhead at, in the midst of the grief that the family are feeling. It was just really incredible.
Yes, Ger, you could see it in Rachel's reaction when she crossed the line on Honeysuckle. I think she was in tears. The emotion just was she was exhausted. You could feel it was such a effort to get over the line, because it looked like Lovanvois was going to win the race, but Honeysuckle's such a gutsy performer, and 4 wins now at Cheltenham for her in 4 successive years. But I think the story is about Henry, really, and I spoke to him after the race, and the strength that he showed, the dignity in what is a very difficult situation for him. I just really felt that a deep, visceral, unspoken love was in the atmosphere and in the environment yesterday for Henry and the de Bromhead family. And he was getting so many people coming up and embracing him and hugging him. And sport has that ability to warm the heart in the most difficult of circumstances, and yesterday was one of those days, and you could really feel the best of humanity in that winner's enclosure after the race.
We'll play 2 snippets now from your interviews with both the winning jockey and the winning trainer. I think we're going to start with Henry here. Have a look.
It's incredible, and then to see the reception she got and we got, everyone's just showing their support to us with after what's happened to us with losing Jack and everything. It's anytime we have a winner at any of these meetings, the support we get is incredible. And look, not that you can depend on it, but it's lovely when it makes things a little bit easier when it does happen.
It makes it maybe 1% easier, maybe.
Yeah 0.001, but it's someone said every time there's been 2 races run in Jack's name, and we didn't win them, but we won races on the same day, and after we won each race there's big rainbows appeared, and I haven't seen it, but someone said they sent me a photo. There was a small little rainbow just behind Rachel after she pulled up, so we know he's always with us. And yeah, it's really tough. But like I say, as we said, these days can make, they help a tiny bit.
Look, it was just an unbelievable day. It's been an unbelievable journey with her. She's been incredible. Henry's done a sensational job with her, and to get to finish like that, walk back in Cheltenham, so special.
If you think about it, 4 runs at Cheltenham, 4 wins.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But testament to Henry and the way he's trained her, to be honest. To bring her back here every year and have her the way he has her, it's just unbelievable. Davy Roach is head lad as well, head lad and assistant trainer. He plays a massive role down in Knockeen, and Coleman, who looks after her and rides her out, and it's a massive team effort.
What was your feelings going into the race? Were you confident?
Yeah, look, I was. I have to be confident in her. It'd be very weird if I wasn't. So, yeah, look, it was brilliant. She got the job done.
Got the job done. It wasn't one of those victories that we've seen before where she completely destroyed the field. Absolutely was digging it out over the last.
She was, because there's an extra half a mile. So it's 2.5 miles, and it's harder for her, I think, over that distance. For Honeysuckle, she's 9 years of age now. I think they're retiring her for the right reasons, because she should be having a happy retirement. And I think Rachel and Honeysuckle have captured the nation's imagination over the last few years. I think they've been really able to illuminate the racing landscape and bring racing into the front page of the newspapers and onto the news part of the TV. The success they've had together to win 2 champion hurdles and 2 Mares hurdles, and even before the season, Honeysuckle was unbeaten. So it was just, from a racing perspective, it was the fairy tale, and then you had obviously the sadness with Henry, and then the way he spoke afterwards was just so admirable.
She's one of our great sports people, Rachel Blackmore, John, isn't she? I mean, even just the way she conducted herself after the race, it just kind of typified the woman.
Absolutely. And remember, she's only turned pro 8 years ago, and she's in her early 30s now. So she didn't have it easy. It took her months to ride her first winner, and to go and do what she's done. It's just incredible to ride the winner of the champion hurdle a couple of times, the Gold Cup on a Plutar last year, the Grand National on Manila time. She's had an unbelievable run, and she's been a great ambassador. And from speaking to everybody in the game and just speaking to people around the country, Rachel Blackmore is so popular. She is so popular with young people, young boys and girls, and she's a great ambassador for the sport. And it's just been a brilliant story, Rachel and Honeysuckle, and hopefully there'll be more to come with Rachel, and hopefully she's got another couple of years ahead of her.
Is there any chance that Honeysuckle might fetch up to Punchestown?
There is a chance. You never know, but I did feel that yesterday was it. I did feel that you couldn't get a better moment, I feel, than that, and I don't think they need to, if they'd like to, because obviously it's our national racing festival in Ireland at Punchestown, so that you could understand being the reason for it, for another swan song. But the horse is safe, and I almost feel that yesterday was it.
Yeah, okay. I saw Johnny Ward making the point that they should do whatever they can at Punchestown to get Constitution Hill over, because Constitution Hill is the new superstar that is capturing the public's imagination after as dominant a performance as you're ever going to see.
Yes, he jumped the last hurdle a bit far out, so he nearly clipped the back end of it. And that would have been just a disaster in the race. But look, ultimately, this horse, as I said, if he starts going into the air and flying, you wouldn't be surprised. I really, really, really now hope they go for the Gold Cup over fences. They've been running over hurdles. They won a champion hurdle. Like Nico de Wanville didn't even take the whip out. I would have won on them, Ger. You would have won on them. Shane would have won on them.
I would have fallen off after the first hurdle. But nice of you to...
I wouldn't have the height for a jockey, unfortunately.
And I wouldn't be able to do the weight. So Constitution Hill, Dawn Run is the only horse to have ever done it, the champion hurdle Gold Cup double in 1986. And it's a very difficult thing to do, because you're going from like a 2 mile distance to a 3.25 mile distance. You're going from a hurdle to a fence. But I do think this horse he looks like a chaser, and I do think they should go that route. Will Nicky Henderson come to Punchestown? I hope so. He likes Punchestown. He likes coming over to Ireland, and I'd love to see it.
Okay.
And especially with the Barry Geraghty link as well.
Today, it's the Champion Chase and the Bumper. Talk to us about the Champion Chase. What do we expect here?
Well, John hasn't put the hat on yet, Ger.
That's the
I'm sorry, John. Sorry, I didn't want to ruin your surprise.
Stick to the script, Hannon.
It says
Hannon,
it here.
stick to the script, man.
Big
Just
letters.
read the script. Yeah.
Stick to the script, Shane. Come on, man. So we have
Colin shaking his head in there. You're in a lot of trouble, Shane.
I'm done after this.
Yeah. Three horses in this. Energyman won the race last year, and that horse is trained by Willie Mullins and will be ridden by Paul Townend. Disappointed last time at Cheltenham in January behind Edward Stone and Editor De Guiche, who won the race. Edward Stone is the winner of the Novice Chase last year, the Arkle Chase over 2 miles. And you've Editor De Guiche, who is an improving type. I think Edward Stone's going to win it. I think Edward Stone is a really good jumper. I think he'll improve. It will be better ground today than it was in January. I don't think he was cherry ripe back then. And I just have a feeling, look, we saw at Facile Vega yesterday that a Willie Mullins horse can put a disappointing run behind him. But I'd want to see better than I did from Energyman in the last day if he's going to repeat the feat of winning his champion chase in second year in a row. I like Edward Stone in that. I think it's between the three of them. I can't see another one. The Bumper, a lovely story in that John Gleeson, the son of the RT TV broadcaster Brian Gleeson, is doing his leaving cert this year, and he rides A Dream to Share for John Kiley down in Waterford. That's a great story. And we also have a Fact to File. Patrick Mullins is riding that. That's a tip in itself. There's a couple of horses in the green colours, Fun. And yeah, that's got a big chance in the Bumper as well. And so I'm looking through it here. Fun will have Daryl Jacob on board. That horse just cruised clear at Leopardstown last time out. And then It's For Me, ridden by Paul Townend, was the most visually impressive Bumper horse I saw. It's For Me, but always look where Patrick Mullins is going, and he's riding Fact to File. So look, it's an open race. There's 24 runners.
Yeah, Fact to File is Willie Mullins' horse in JP's colours, and Patrick Mullins is on board. So right. It's time for JD's. What's going to happen here, Shane?
I wonder.
Come on, tell us.
Go on.
It's time for John Duggan's charity tips of the day. Woohoo!
It's still surprising, to be fair. Yeah,
it cost £45, lads. £45.
Oof.
Yeah, and there was one going for £69, and there was another shop in the. They've got this big tent with all the kind of marquee and all these shops. They were pouring out glasses of champagne while they were selling hats and scarves yesterday at 11 o'clock in the morning. And obviously, I'm a professional. I wouldn't go there. But if you're off, it's not a bad idea, actually.
You tipped the 18-1 winner Jazzy Maddie yesterday, John. So that paid for the hat.
That was the Fairy Tale of New York. Came in at 18-1.
Hey,
yeah.
A lot of controversy about that, of course.
Why?
Came in at 10-1, is what Colin thought it was all these years. He's been singing the wrong lyrics.
Called out.
So Colin Buhig's karaoke life in Cork is now his reputation's in shreds.
Absolutely.
Hatters.
I mean, how does anybody know it's not 18-1?
Yeah. Okay. That's a lot of Christmas Eves wasted, Colin.
He's singing in our ears. Unfortunately, the rest of the world can't hear it, or fortunately for our ratings, who knows? Maybe we should get bad singing on it. That's how they built the whole Pop Idol thing. Anyway, John, I like the hat.
Yeah.
The other thing that was reported, the most expensive pint of Guinness in the world, but it's not really a pint of Guinness, it's black velvet. But the Daily Mail were loving this. £20, 20 of your finest King's pounds for a pint with a top of, instead of My Waddy, it's champagne.
In a plastic cup.
Presume it's plastic, yeah.
They've extended the Guinness Village. I need to go down and see what it's like, because apparently they've extended it. The Guinness Village is one of these beautiful, pristine meccas at 9 o'clock in the morning that just turns into this, I don't know what you want to call it, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Decadent and depraved.
That sounds like paradise.
Yes, at 5 o'clock in the evening.
A Guinness Village. I live opposite the Guinness factory there in Smithfield. Right across, literally, you open the window, you step onto the balcony, and you can see. It's like Willy Wonka's factory. You can see your Guinness being made. You can smell the barley and the oats and the hops. So Guinness Village sounds like paradise to me.
Shane's balcony sounds very posh, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Ooh, look at me, my balcony.
That's very small.
Yeah.
My double
so
balcony.
I thought Temple Bar
Looking
was
down at my
bad.
minions, making my Guinness.
Notions.
So
we got tips, yeah. Rescue this part of the show here, JD. Come on.
Ball Sports giving us the €200. We are obviously up about 97 already. The nap is Edward Stone at 3:30 at 6-4 for 50. 130 Champ Kiley each way at 8-1 for 15 each way. Champ Kylie's a horse I've been impressed with this season. I think he's got a nice turn of foot. He could be an each way chance. Time Hill in the novices chase at 2.10 at 9-1 for 10 each way. Iker Allen at 25-1 for Willie Mullins on a longer distance now. And the colours of JB McManus might be worth a €10 each way bet in the 250. The 4.10, I think Delta Work will win the cross country. He's 6-5 for $30. The 4.50 Midnight Run is 18-1 for Joseph O'Brien, first time in a handicap for 10 each way. And the 5.30, I'm going to go for Factifile 9-2 for 15 each way. So the each way bets Factifile, Midnight Run, Iker Allen at 25-1, and Time Hill and Champ Kylie. And the win bets Delta Work and the nap of the day, lads. Edward Stone in the champion chase.
All right, JD, good stuff. Enjoy today. Happy punting. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Ger. Thanks, Shane.
Cheers, John.
And they're all. Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
Loads of comments coming in a little bit earlier on. The Carpet Man says Matt Dawson, one hell of a scrum half. Mr. Quinn says, I can't believe how disrespected Honeysuckle was prior to the race. A lot of prominent pundits completely disregarded her. She was always the best horse in the race. I think like it was nip and tuck going down to the last, and she absolutely had to dig deep. So I can see why, not odds on. And in the end, it was good value. Holland will go missing in the bigger game, says Shane. He's a tap-in merchant lad, says Chris. A lot of tap-ins.
Sorry, but like you have to be there, don't you?
As goal hangers go,
it's what
you
it
have
is.
To be there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, what it is the movement and the expectation that a goalkeeper or defender is going to make a mistake. Because some strikers just rest in their laurels. Weghorst being one of them, who kind of just waits. Haaland interprets a situation and sees it coming before anyone else does.
The behind the goals shot of the header, that was the second goal, I think, where he just follows in the incredible thunderbolt from De Bruyne. It's as you say, that is like peak. He keeps moving the whole time, always moving forward, constantly, relentlessly moving forward, and still, like, as the ball is coming to him, he's getting up to his full height. And you're like,
yeah,
he's not small.
The header wasn't easy from the De Bruyne shot that hits the crossbar and bounces up. First of all, his height allows him to get the power in the header because he gets there with ease. But then just
he looked like
the power,
praying mantis,
falcon. Yeah, he was just. You can say what you like about the nature of the goals, the 5 goals. Like, yeah, De Bruyne's last goal in injury time was probably the goal of the night, but Haaland has to be there, and the finishes are just sublime. Like, he's just incredible.
More a cobra than a praying mantis. Although he's a little bit
googling praying mantis there.
He's a little bit sticky, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you know what height Mac Hansen is?
What height Mac Hansen? He looks about 6'1", I want to say.
Yeah.
Is he? Yeah,
like 6'2".
6'2".
I was very surprised.
Well, you thought he was smaller?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, I was like, he's a 5'10", 5'11" guy.
He's
a little lad.
Taller guy.
He ain't a little lad.
No, he's definitely not a little lad. He's
There's a good piece in the London Times where no one seems to care about the we all hate the English thing. They're kind of taking that as the Telegraph doesn't mention Ireland today in the rugby coverage. By the way, it's mad. It's just pictures of Manitoulagi. But the London Times are like, this team are pretty good. Mac Hansen, he's an interesting character. They've talked to one of his former teammates at the Brumbies, who and also got the story of the Ruck bar, or is it the RUC bar? Wouldn't that be ironic? Where Andy Friend's son was the barman, and that's where they met.
Right.
And they got chatting. He's like, "Oh, my ma's from Cork," and he's like, "I should tell me dad," and sure he did, and here we are.
Jesus.
In the running for certainly making the team of the tournament.
Just little butterfly effect moments that shape history. Maybe we wouldn't have won the Grand Slam without Mac Hansen's performance the last day.
No, but the drunken Irish and their Irish bars going around the world finding world-class rugby players, yeah.
Stay to them.
Put that in your skit on Sunday Night Live, what?
No, I'm excited about Mac Hansen. Like, he's just got an attitude as well, a swagger about him that he knows he's good. And I love that. Well, every single decision he made, it was one of those 10 out of 10 performances. I think you can't pick a hole in his performance the last day. So, yeah, the English are not talking about us; they're ignoring us. Ger.
Graham Shaw, well said. Keith Wood, Ireland could struggle and win by 3 points. It's not complacency. England won't lie down. The Six Nations is never easy. When you think about it, right? Like, Wales in their first game under Gatland gave us a good game for a period of time. We didn't absolutely annihilate them until later on, and I think we're not going to have Dan Sheehan it looks like we're not going to have fully fit Gary Ringrose, who, you know, before he missed the game was like definitely in the running for player of the tournament. Although Gibson Park coming back is a bit of a balancing to that. Like, how does Tyke Furlong hold up after last week and the exploits, where you kind of figured they'd give Furlong 45-50 minutes because that's all they need to give him, and actually it turned out they needed to give him loads more than that. So I think that there's a world where England come and pick a lot of our lads who know exactly how to manage a game and spoil and get in the referee's ear and cause a bit of trouble. And the crowd are a little bit like, what's going on here? We're all pissed and we're supposed to be celebrating, and it's 45 minutes gone and it's 3-0.
I think I understand the argument that it could be down to within a score. I'm leaning towards the thinking of the bookies. 16 point spread. I think it'll be a 20-point win. I think, now I want to hear what Andy Dunn has to say about this, because he's been spot on in his prediction so far in the tournament, but I just have a feeling Ireland could do a job on them. Like, the occasion is massive and huge, but these players are more than ready for it. So all right, I think they'll be up for it.
Whet your appetite with the Brian O'Driscoll podcast, available in the OTB Rugby feed. Search OTB Rugby. You can get John Duggan's tips every morning. Subscribe to our OTB daily feed, and that's where you'll find Mark Your Card. And then big conversation last night about the extended FIFA World Cup on the football show. Make sure you subscribe to our football stream for that one, and you can follow us across all of our social channels. That's at Off the Ball AM. We're also on Instagram. We have a rugby account. We have our main account as well. After this break, we're talking Gaelic football ahead of what's going to be D-Day for a lot of teams, particularly in Division 2. But we'll get some analysis on the trends that we've seen so far, particularly from the scoring side of things, with Conleith Gilligan coming next. In the ad break, though, a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod, where Paddy, James and Tommy discuss Mayo. The Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
The Koigig Pod on Off the Ball.
I'm grimacing because it was such an opportunity. Possession-wise, I thought they were good, but they didn't have the cutting edge, and they don't have Sam Kerr.
I feel like if you're a referee, you know, you're watching a player for that sort of thing, and the fact that she's just continually being allowed to do it says a lot about the state of the refereeing in the game.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday, and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
Mayo were at a low ebb there at the end of last year, all through the winter, and you'd be thinking, can they actually raise it now? Can someone go into that dressing room and actually pick them up off the floor after losing a couple to retirement and to Australia? Can someone go in and drag them up? And he's done it. And you'd have to say they're in the top. I would say, I don't know about your power rankings, Tommy, but I would put them in the top 3. I put them in the top 3 in the country. I'd say they're in with a serious shout. I just think it's a credit to them, because they have a complete, even fourth, they have a complete new full forward line, because they're going to have probably Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, who they didn't have at the end last year, and Aidan Shane there, with James Carr playing, the mercurial James Carr playing a lot better as well. Like, so you'd have to say that job that they've done is highly impressive, and I think that they're definitely going to rattle it this year. I don't know whether you'd put them favourites at the moment, probably not. Whether they want to go for the National League title or not is hard to know as well. But
kind of no choice.
From the evidence we've seen, they're top 3.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, you can get more high-end analysis on the Football Pod with Paddy, James and Tommy if you just subscribe to the OTB GAA feed. We want to focus a little bit more on Division 2 and maybe some of the other trends that are coming out from the league so far. And I'm delighted to say Conleith Gilligan is with us this morning. Conleith, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
One of the things, Cian Johnson, when we were chatting about this in advance, he pointed out that one of the criticisms that Derry get is that they're ultimately very reliant on a single individual in Shane McGuigan to get the scores. And he's making the point that while that may be true, what difference does it make if you have a high scorer? If you look at Galway, nobody's saying they're too reliant on Shane Walsh. If you look at Kerry, nobody's going, Jesus, take Clifford out of that team and you're in a bit of trouble. So are we maybe misrepresenting the Derry scenario here by focusing on Shane McGuigan's incredible propensity to deliver high scores?
Yeah, I think you are. I think probably in previous years that has been the case, but I think Shane McGuigan's game has definitely evolved. He's playing a lot more of his football out around the 40-metre line, and that stops him from being easily marked in. And I think if you've seen over the last number of games where he hasn't been his best, there has been other players stepped up, and Niall Turner comes in with a goal, Niall Loughlin's been coming in with a goal, and especially last year Derry didn't really have the ability to come off the bench, but again Dublin, 2 of the subs came off the bench and scored, and while you were expecting Dublin's sub bench to add the difference, it was actually Derry who done that.
I think it's a trap I've fallen into a lot, where I'm analysing this Derry team and charting their evolution against the evolution of the Donegal team, and it's an easy and maybe it's a lazy thing to do, and yet it's very interesting, because like they're kind of on the same trajectory as that Donegal side, where they nailed down exactly what their identity was going to be from a defensive style of play. They perfected that, and as the time has gone on, they're layering in levels of attacking threat and ability and just becoming better. Now maybe that Donegal team had better players, we'll see, and maybe their ceiling was slightly higher, but again we'll see. If I'm Derry, I'm relatively happy with the pace that the game is evolving.
Yeah, well, I think when you go back to that Donegal team, they had won a National League a couple of years previous to McGuinness and Gallagher coming in, so they had Michael Murphy, they had so many good players, and I think Derry are actually a wee bit earlier in that some of their big players haven't just developed as quickly, but when Conor Glass came back into the team, it gave them a midfield platform, and I think probably the fact that Shane McGuigan has now got a number of players to go on with them, and the one thing Rory Gallagher has been able to do is take on young players and bed them in straight away, and it's just been seamless. And I think the Dublin game, for I suppose us Derry supporters, we were looking at as going to be the acid test in the league, and I don't actually think Derry played that badly in that first half against Dublin, but I think they played to the Division 2 level that they've been at. I think once Dublin opened up the gears and played better, I think it brought Derry to a new level, and I think Derry probably needed that, and moving into the Clare game this weekend, I think Derry have layered up on what they've done. Defensively, they've been the soundest in the league. They've scored heavy, albeit racking up some big scores against Kildare and against Meath. But I think they've showed a real ruthless streak, because it would have been easy to take the foot of the gas, but they haven't done that. And I think they've put themselves in a serious position. And I suppose I thought Derry may have had to come down to the last league game against Cork. And I think Derry will have it done this weekend. And it leaves that division very interesting below them.
Do you expect Conleith, Derry and Mayo, the two teams, the top of the top 2 divisions, to be thereabouts come the real business end of the All-Ireland this year?
Yeah, well, look, I think Mayo have been very, very impressive. I think probably the Conroy being back, Donoghue being back, O'Shea going at full forward. I was at the Armagh game and I thought he was brilliant that day. And I think probably had Mayo not taken him off that day, Mayo probably would have got full points there in Armagh. But I think what they've done, and they've added layers to play things, and when Jack Kearney's come in, and we've been looking at the likes of Kearney for the last number of years that he was going to come forward, and now it looks like he's really stepped up. James Kerr, there's been so many options now for Mayo that I think that while they haven't really been tested to the nth degree, I think they've showed enough that they're probably going to a league final. And I know in some of the podcasts and some of the media they've talked about teams not wanting to win the league. I'm not just so convinced about that, because if you look at Kerry last year, they carried on their league form into the championship, and because I think it's Easter Sunday, the first round of the Connacht Championship, it comes very, very quick. So I think teams can't buy form now. If you're not winning these games in the next week or two, you're going to be in really trouble come the provincial championships. And whether that matters or not, that's another question for the management.
Yeah, I think it's a different scenario if Mayo are playing somebody who isn't Roscommon than if they're playing Roscommon twice in a week, essentially. You would definitely want to win that game, because they found it difficult to recover from not putting their full effort in last year, to your point.
Yeah, look, and I think probably if it's not going to be Roscommon, and I don't think it is, I think Roscommon probably going to find the next couple of games sticky. And when you look at it, do Galway really want to push on? I definitely think Armagh would want to win that league. I think it'll be a massive statement for Kieran McGinney's side after him being there 7 years. Galway may not want it as much, but I think when you look at the league table, Mayo's on 8, Roscommon, is on 6, Galway, Armagh. A lot of teams now in the middle of that have still a lot to play for, because should Armagh happen to lose, they're then pulled into the relegation dogfight, because Tyrone or Monaghan's going to be on 6 points, and then you're looking at head-to-heads, and I think probably Division 1 at the bottom is going to be the tight it has been for some time, and I do expect a team on 6 points probably this season to be relegated.
Who's that team going to be, Conleith? Because you look at the game in Clonus this weekend, Monaghan Tyrone has got relegation scrap written all over it. You'd imagine the loser of that game is in serious trouble, and Monaghan on 4 points. I think Tyrone is in 3.
Yeah, Tyrone's on 4. Monaghan's on 4, Donegal's on 3. And I think probably that game will be Ulster final standard. The referee would need 9 A's in that game just to keep it under wraps, because I think familiarity breeds contempt, and these teams have played each other every year in the league, and they've always been really, really tight games. Tyrone don't want Armagh coming in the last game of the season with the possibility of relegating them. Whereas Mayo Monaghan, I think, travelled to Kerry on the last day away. So there's a lot to be played for in this game, because both teams could struggle on the last day. I think Donegal probably are going to go down at this stage, and I suppose the piece in the Irish Examiner this morning with Jim McGuinness probably heaps more pressure on a Donegal county board and team that really didn't need it. But I think it will be probably Tyrone to pick up that points. But I think the job that Monaghan have done this year, Vinnie Corey and his brother Martin, who's a fabulous coach in his own right, I think they've done a really good job after a very difficult start, and I think there still will be a wee bit to play for there.
This is really interesting, because the Donegal story, by the way, everybody should check that out. McGuinness basically said that he was going to be part of the backroom team if Rory Gallagher and Carl Lacey had got the job. But when they pulled out, he said he would still be available to help at least this year, all the way up to the summer, because they're at home at the moment and the county board never rang back. And he makes the point that it was really unfortunate that he was name checked when he thought he was part of a confidential process by the county board, but he was name checked, and the implication, as he saw it, was that he was unwilling to help, when actually that's not the case. He is willing to help, and it looks like he's even willing to help the current management team if the offer was to be made. So we might come back to that story, but the whole notion of a team going down to Division 2 and benefiting from a confidence booster into next season's Ulster Championship, is it a disaster for Monaghan or Donegal if they were to go down and be the best team in Division 2 next year, and to use that as a springboard for Ulster Championship stuff? Or at the moment is the gap between Division 1 and 2 so pronounced that it would be a bit of a disaster?
I don't think it's a complete disaster. I think the top end of Division 2 and the rest of Division 1 is very, very similar. But I think probably just from where Donegal are at the moment, they just don't need any more trouble or any more hassle. And Paddy Carr, who's a man who's wanted this Donegal job every single time has come up over the last decade and has just been falling short. And he's probably just got the Donegal job at a really poor time. Look, I think Monaghan have been very good. I was at Clonus for Monaghan and Donegal, and I think there's a lot of pluses in Monaghan. I think O'Hanlon, players like that coming back, looking at some of the other bits. It's whether McManus can come in now all the time and do it. I think Monaghan have a lot of pluses. Darren Hughes is back, which means Daisy Ward at 6 isn't as vulnerable as he had been, because Daisy Ward has been driving out of 6 but leaving a gap. Darren Hughes has come in, he's filled that, and Monaghan have looked a very, very different team with Darren Hughes in there. But I think it's Monaghan's ability off the bench. Sean Jones has come on. He kicked 1-2 against Donegal in 12 minutes, and he's been very good anytime I've seen him. So I think Monaghan have a lot of pluses. They're very young, they're new, and if you take Jack McCarn, who's struggled with injury a bit, into the mix, I think regardless of whether Monaghan go down, I think they'll have a major say in the championship as well, because they are that sort of team building now, and the longer that Vinnie Corey and Martin Corey has them, I think they will get better as the season goes on.
Again, Cian was making the point in preparation for this piece that teams who've gone down in recent seasons have managed to blood a load of players in the league, whereas Monaghan have had to keep their squad quite tight to maintain their Division 1 status. And the trade-off is that you're still playing Division 1 football, but you've got fewer players that you've managed to blood through the league. So he made the point that in 2021 Monaghan relegated Galway in the final day. Joyce blooded Matthew Tierney, Carl Sweeney, Dylan McHugh and a few others. The Dubs obviously got relegated again by Monaghan on the last day. Dublin had Lee Gannon, Robbie McDade, Lorcan Adele, who had all been given exposure. I think Monaghan traditionally have used between 22 and 23 players in the league in this period where they've managed to stay up. So it's a strategy, and in the long run you have to wonder, is there a trade-off between actually getting a broader, deeper squad, particularly now in the more condensed season? So what's your instinct about what the right course of action is? It's obviously horses for courses, but on balance, do you think would be the best way?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on where the manager's at. If it's a manager's first year, it's very hard to blood players because he needs to hit the ground running, because if he loses the confidence of the people around him, it's very hard to get that back. But if you look at Dublin this year, they've had David O'Hanlon, Dara Newcombe. If they'd have been in Division 1, would those players have got as much time, and would they have looked better last year? Lee Gannon has come through and Dublin have created sort of a gap there. Derry this year have done similar. They've brought in sort of some young players off the bench, like Neil O'Donnell, who's just out of minors, who had played in the McKenna Cup and from Ballinair, my own club. So in Division 1, they wouldn't have got those chances, and I think it's probably depends on where the trajectory of the management is. If they, like Porrick Joyce has a wee bit of credit in the bank, they can do that. If it's a new manager like Vinnie Curry, it's probably harder to bring new players in, and Division 2 probably is a better place for that. But for teams to win the big competitions, really you need to be in Division 1 playing the better teams week in and week out, just so you know what your strength and depth is like. And I think it's very difficult to come in Division 2 and probably just push on into that top. Derry done it last year and come very close, ultimately fell a bit short. But I think if you're in Division 1, you have a much better chance because you're playing the better opposition week in and week out.
Just over 11,000 sellout at Port Talton in Navan this weekend, Conleith, for that Dublin Meath game. The first time they've met in the league in Navan, I think, in 35 years. It's going to be some occasion, and Dublin can secure promotion back to Division 1 with a win. From watching the Dubs against Derry, are there areas in which they are, I don't want to use the word weaker, but certainly more fallible, I guess, than they have been in recent years?
Yeah, look, and I think they have been vulnerable at the start of the league from their kickouts as well. It's something you didn't expect from Dublin. I think against Derry, it was probably the best Dublin have been all through the league in that first half. I thought they got their kickouts away under heavy presses at time from Derry. The second half, it malfunctioned a small piece. But look, I think it's going to be a great occasion. Meath have to show something. They started off the league under Colm O'Rourke. He mapped out what he wanted to do. He wanted to kick ball. He wanted to play long, better flowing football. But I think that has sort of fallen flat as teams have got a wee bit better. Like only Limerick have leaked more scores. So like they have a problem at the back, and only Kildare have scored less in them divisions. So I think it's not all rosy. Dublin will ask different questions. Dublin would need to tighten up defensively a wee bit, but I think the likes of McCarthy coming back, Merchant, the introduction of Jack McCaffrey has just left Dublin just on a different level to where Meath are at. And I think if they were to get anything out of this game, I think they would have to play to their very, very maximum. But look, Park Talton, it's a brilliant venue, and I think it's probably going to be a massive occasion, but I just don't see where Meath are going to get enough scores at and how they're going to stop Dublin, because promotion is still where Desi Farr wants to get to, and I think he'll probably start looking a lot closer to this championship team this week against Meath.
Can we just go back to Derry for the last couple of minutes here, Conleith? The quality of Derry's defence is the best in the league at the moment, just in terms of the output. And obviously everybody's going to point to the fact, they're just defending in numbers, but that's not the case. It's not just defending in numbers. There's a strategy behind it. It's obviously brilliantly well coached. Everybody understands their role. Why are they better at it at the moment than everybody else?
Yeah, I think they're brilliantly coached at it. And if you look at the Dublin game, Derry had played a very similar style right the way through, but when you had players that can kick points from range, it's a wee bit harder. I think Derry's willingness to work off the ball has probably set them aside from the McKenna Cup when they played Tyrone. They run them off the park with willingness to work. And Brenton Rodgers now, who's released into the middle, when he charges forward, he knows he can do that with a certain amount of confidence because Paul Cassidy is working back for him. Lachlan Murray came off the bench the last day and he kicked a great point. And if you look at his point again and you follow it back, he put in a tackle right from the kick out on his own 20-metre line. And that's stuff that, yes, it's coachable, but the desire for players to do that, because they know this is what Rory Gallagher values. And kicking the point won't get you on that Derry team, but the work rate off the ball will. And if you can add the value at the other end, it'll be massive. And I think Derry have probably just got it right. They've also played a very consistent team. The Derry team that's playing in the league now is not dissimilar to they played in the first round of the McKenna Cup. And because of the shortened season, I don't think you need to sort of mix and match. So Derry's playing the same 17, 18 players all the way through the league. And while other teams are experimenting, Derry's not. Derry have been very, very consistent in terms of what they want to do. And Chrissy McCaig and once Conor Glass come back and Ethan Doherty, it just added serious value to what they were trying to do. And the pace and power, which is just what their game's built on. When those players come back, I think it just gives Derry a massive boost.
Because I've definitely heard the argument on the football pod and elsewhere that they're just a little bit short of the scoring power that they're going to need to be able to win All Ireland. But the game against Galway last year was really their first big opportunity in Croke Park to announce themselves. And it looks like they just got matchups wrong. But again, to go back to our pre-show chat, that's what Cian Johnson's making the point that actually if they got the matchups right, then that game's a totally different game. And we're not talking about a side who were overawed by the occasion, or who, you know, a goalkeeping howler cost them. It's like it's nip and tuck against a Galway side who then push Kerry all the way in the All-Ireland final. So they're actually much closer. I think the argument is that they're much closer to being genuine All-Ireland contenders than they're being given credit for at the moment.
Yeah, look, I think so. You know, Derry were 4-0 up on that game, and they were cruising. They kicked a couple of really poor wides and taken a few bad options, and then the sort of 5 or 10 minutes before half-time cost them. So instead of going in at half-time 3 or 4 points up, with the controversial score from Hawkeye, they suddenly found themselves in a difficult position mentally to cope. They hadn't been in Croke Park that often at the very top end, where they played in Division 2 and 3 finals. It hadn't been in Division 1, and I think where Derry are at now, the Dublin game was massive in Celtic Park, and if they can not slip up against Clare, they're looking at another game against the Dubs in Croke Park, and that is where this Derry team are going to learn at the very top end. And there may be another lesson somewhere down the line to be learned, maybe in a league final, but I think all of the stuff that Derry are doing now is building towards a bigger day and a better day. And I think Croke Park is where this team needs to be. Yes, you're right. Probably when the game was going away from them, they didn't have the strength and depth coming off the bench. But I think that has improved. You know, I think Matthew Downey, you know, who has been caught with injuries, hasn't really played as much this year. I think he's a player that to watch out for. Lachlan Murray's come off the bench. Ushie McWilliams came off the bench and kicks the last day. So I think the belief that those players have now with another season, and especially beating Dublin, because it was the real statement when I know winning Ulster was massive, but going on a Dublin team that needed to win that game as well and beating them in a game they both wanted to win, I think that'll do Derry the world of good. And probably going into the break week with that win was massive as well, because Derry were able to maybe take their foot off the gas a wee bit, relax, whereas Dublin have had to sort of go hell for leather because they can't really afford to slip up against Meath, or else, you know, because Cork's coming strong behind them.
Yeah.
And, you know, if Derry happened to win on Sunday, they probably travel to Cork with a weakened team. So Dublin want to get done this week, and I think probably the break week is something they've probably had to work a wee bit harder than some of the teams like Mayo and Derry and maybe Laois and Cavan and the other divisions that top the group.
Conleith, at the other end of Division 2 briefly, like Ger's been crying into his cornflakes here every morning thinking about the thought of Kildare in the Tailteann Cup. Like, that's a huge game, 3:45 on Sunday against Limerick. Down there, I think it is in Limerick as well. Look, bit of turmoil in Limerick football this week with Ray Dempsey's departure, a bit of player unrest. Mark Fitzgerald, who was part of his backroom team, a Kerry man, has come in to take over for the rest of the year. Like, this game is huge for Kildare and their year ahead, essentially.
Yeah, look, it's massive, and I suppose a lot's been made of how poor Kildare have been at the back. You know, how poor they've been up front and having not scored goals. And when you've likes of Neil Flynn and Derek Kerwin and Paul Criven and players like that, you wonder just what's going wrong. You know, like, they got the management team they wanted and the excitement that followed that, but they have really fallen flat. And they were lucky enough to get the win, I think, that time against Clare. So like, they could have been in a worse position. But it's a must-win game, and it doesn't even guarantee them anything other than the loser. Well, if they lose this game, they're gone. Limerick's gone anyway, and they've put themselves under a huge pressure. You know, I genuinely don't like hearing of players' votes and things like that, because they have put themselves under pressure. Obviously, Mark Fitzgerald was there; he knows the ins and outs of it, so he's probably in a good enough place. But you know, after last year and Billy Lee and the journey they've been on the last 2 or 3 years, transition has probably been hard for everybody. And you know, and Ray Dempsey been so close to getting the Mayo job, you know, you just wonder what has been on in there. But look, this is massive. Kildare probably do need to get their house in order defensively straight away, because they have forwards, and you think those forwards are eventually going to click and they're going to score, because good players, the class will always rise to the top, but form is something they're really stuck for. And the fact that the championship is leading so quickly out of this, if you go into that in bad form, I just don't see how you get out of it, because you don't have 3 or 4 weeks like you would have had previously to play a challenge match or two and get yourself up and running. So the end of league form will be where a team's at for championship, and it's just hard to see Kildare getting themselves out of this trouble at this stage. But the one thing you have, when you're scoring forward, you always have a chance, and Flynn has been injured a wee bit, and Woodgate has been missing. So if they could get those players back, I think they stand a very good chance, but they're in a very difficult position, and Limerick are coming. New managers, whether it be Premier League or not, always get a bounce, and if Limerick can get a bounce, it's going to put Kildare in a very precarious position. And again, and not to be disrespectful to the Tailteann Cup, because I know a lot of the chat is around that teams don't want to be. Like, I think the Tailteann Cup has been brilliant, and I think the rhetoric around teams not wanting to be there you are where you are based on the form you're in, and if you find yourself in that position, you have to make the best of that situation for me.
Did you have any views, Conleith, on the diving scourge that seems to have reared its ugly head in Gaelic games of late? Like we saw incidents with Conor Cox of Roscommon and Galway's Sean Kelly the last day out, I think, where players are going down very easily. I know Eamon Fitzmaurice was making the point that maybe referees need to start dishing out cards for players that are diving. Like, you're involved at club level, I don't know if it's a massive issue there as well, but how do you see this being fixed?
Look, I think it's a massive level at every bit of football, and probably when you look at things that happened at senior inter-county level, it's followed by younger players and it's taken into the club game. I think there's always been people living on the edge, players lived on the edge. I've done it myself. You get a bit of contact from behind, you go down because you want the free. But I think that's slightly different from being pushed in the chest and holding your face, or being hit on the shoulder and go down holding your head. I think that has to be stamped out, because the stakes are too high now for teams, and referees need help, because in normal time a lot of these incidents do look like genuine hits or assaults, or call them what you want, but when you slow them down, there's nothing in them. So it's very, very hard for referees, linesmen and umpires at the pace the game's played in now to probably get it right all the time. But I think it has to be stamped out. And the thing is, what you're probably going to see this weekend with the talk about it is one or two players are going to get cards for simulation or diving, and that may go a wee bit towards stemming that. But look, I think it's a problem that's been in the game forever. There's always been a player getting a heavy hit, and if he thinks that it's advantageous to his team, he's going to lay down that wee bit extra. And in many cases, if he didn't do it, he would probably be castigated because the opposition have been down to 14 men. So look, I think this weekend it'll probably stamp out a wee bit. I think it's a problem, but I don't think it's a massive issue in the way it's been portrayed. I think players have always played to the edge, and where there's a wee advantage to be had, players will take it.
Conleith, great stuff. Enjoy the games this weekend. Thanks a million, man.
All right, thanks, Ian. See you, Ger.
Conleith Gilligan giving his thoughts there this morning on a range of topics. Derry, genuine All-Ireland contenders.
Yeah, I fancy them big time. Like, it's not easy to defend an Ulster title, but I can't see past Derry this year.
And they also don't need to, obviously.
No, that's true. Yeah,
no matter what happens in Ulster, it's largely irrelevant when it comes to their All-Ireland credentials, I think.
They were so disappointing in the All-Ireland semi-final last year against Galway, I thought, but Galway showed up on the day. That experience will stand to them. I'm going to be watching Division 2 very, very closely this weekend, the relegation battle. That Kildare-Limerick match is going to be cracker.
All right, Shane, don't shut up.
Bring it home.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Sean McGoldrick is tweeting this morning that dreams do come true in boxing. Kildare native Dennis Hogan will fulfil his lifetime ambition of defending a world title on home soil on the undercard of the Taylor Cameron Show in the 3 Arena on the 20th of May. Takes on James Metcalf in his first defence of the IBO Super Welterweight title. He's got an incredible story, Dennis Hogan, so we wish him the very best of that. And interesting to see how quickly tickets sell out for the fight in the 3 Arena on the 20th of May. I don't know. I have no sense at the moment yet of.
It'll sell out in no time, surely. I don't know when the tickets are on sale exactly, but I suppose they have to wait for the full undercard to be announced. But it's going to be a cracking night, and then Croke Park maybe later in the year, September, October time. That'll be nice.
Coming up on tomorrow's show, Fiona Hayes, Graham Hunter, Vinnie Perth, JD live from Cheltenham. You had to be there, Philippe Auclair, and plenty more besides right now. Dan McDonnell on last night's football show. Have a gorgeous day.
They're currently celebrating Gundogan with Manchester City's fourth, Erling Haaland with a hat-trick, and I think we can safely say they're through to the knockout stages, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say a 4-0 up. I did fancy them to go through the season comfortably, but not maybe that comfortably, if you know what I mean. I sort of was one of those where I felt there would be no real stress for them, but it's actually turning into a bit of a thrashing from Leipzig's perspective. Very good goal from Gundogan. I think we're doing that usual post-goal thing of checking if there's anything for VAR to have a look at, but it's all pretty clear cut. Very high quality strike.
Clear cut, yeah, really good goal. So the first half, City on top. Haaland, first goal was a penalty. It was a real the game is gone kind of a moment penalty, where ball was headed towards defender's arm. Eyewitness that the arm was dramatically away from body. It was enough away from body to call VAR in. Referee went over to the sideline and gave the penalty, gave a yellow card. I don't think it should be a penalty, but it's a penalty. Haaland scores that, and then within 30 seconds to a minute. De Bruyne hits what I would liken to Roberto Di Matteo's volley in an FA Cup final a long time ago, Dan, against Middlesbrough.
Oh, yeah.
In the early stages, De Bruyne rifles volley, underside of the crossbar, doesn't go in on this occasion, comes out to Haaland, who jumps and does really well, actually, gets right up to head the ball into an empty net. And then the third goal is a corner. Man City have been dangerous from corners all evening, and ball is headed across the goal line and defender clears it, but Haaland anticipates the clearance and blocks it into the net. So that was 3-0 at half-time, game over, and now Gundogan has just added some cherry to the icing, to the cake, etc. In the other game, by the way, Inter Milan went into their away tie against Porto 1-0 up, and it is 0-0 on the night, so Inter still 1-0 up in this round of 16, a tie on aggregate. So that's about where we are in the Champions League this evening. I always thought you'd take Cheltenham week off.
Oh, I pretty much do, yeah. I just come in to see you for an hour here.
Oh, so you're off paper duty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Clear the decks.
Well, I mean, it's actually, to be honest, I mean, it's not the worst week in the world to be off, because you're heading into International Week is upon us. International Fortnight is upon us. I mean, this time next week, it'll be 24 hours out from Ireland, Latvia, but you know, the first game of the international year is upon us. So it gets very busy. So it's always a week. Apparently there's some other sporting events on this week, some pretty big sporting events on this week, not just Cheltenham. So it's a good time to just enjoy it. Yeah.
Latvia on the Thursday, France on a Monday.
No, Wednesday. Wednesday is Latvia. So and then France on the Monday the 27th. Yeah. So France playing Holland on the 24th as well. It's probably another date to note on the Friday night. So actually, it's unusual. You're going to have a really big game in Ireland's group that you'll be able to see that it won't clash with an Ireland game at the same night, which is often the case. So get a chance to have a good look at them.
Mick just told me both live and off the ball, so I've just discovered I'll be at both games.
Oh, there you go. I'll see you there.
What a luxurious position to find yourself in.
Yeah.
How blessed. I mean, I was, to be fair, I did know I looked a long time ago to see what night the France match was on and figured Monday.
I'd like to think you wouldn't be so blasé about the gig that you would not know you were going to.
Latvia, I was less sure, I'll be honest. But France, just the thought of being there to see Mbappe, and obviously the game itself was high on the agenda. So, what's the word on the squad come Thursday?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at, there's always that danger of last minute injuries. I don't think there's anything that's come over the horizon. There was a few players missing at the weekend. Queeveen Kelleher, Shane Duffy hasn't been playing anyway. Kelleher hasn't been playing anyway. But
Haaland just scored his fourth, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Man City's fifth. He had a few bites at it. There was a brilliant header. I mean, if you're watching the highlights at any stage, just note the sheer athleticism of this header on Haaland's part. It's outrageous. I mean, it really is. The header was saved, came back to him and just whacked it in with his left foot, and as is customary, they cut to Dad in the crowd, who is jumping around with mates. His dad's having a grand time at the moment, isn't he?
It's a great...
It's just generally life is spent in a corporate box celebrating his sons.
Yeah, and like particularly as, to be fair, anyone who plays like Premier League football and internationally at a good level as Alfinga did, like, it can be reasonably very proud of their own career, and yet he's getting to live through an entire second career now, just on another level. It's a bit of a sort of a Jos Verstappen, Max Verstappen vibe in some ways. It's like you got to a certain level, but like then the next one is a freak. And I mean, I wonder what the cumulative distance of his goals tonight, Haaland, will be. Sort of close range.
12 yards.
12 yards, yeah. I have an idea of the first one.
Yeah.
And then the others.
He might just about break 30.
Would you get 12 more between the rest of them? Potentially. But yeah.
You were saying?
I can't remember what I was saying. Yeah, the squad, I think like Mikey Johnson would probably be in the squad, who's the new recruit.
How good is Mikey Johnson?
Don't really know, is the honest answer.
So I had a look at his highlights reel when he was Irish qualified.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there to like, but obviously highlights aren't the full package, to say the least.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I suppose, there'd be Celtic fans sort of listening, watching, who would have watched a lot of Mikey Johnston, who would have broken the scene as a very exciting young player.
It's technically very good.
Yeah, a very good dribbler. I mean, that's the thing for Stephen Kenny. He's always spoken about wanting a player who's a real, who can dribble and take people on. I always thought when he was maybe speaking about his disappointment that Aaron Connolly hadn't pushed on, like he had a very pointed comment about how Aaron Connolly and this was actually striking, that with the 21s, Aaron Conleith was a real dribbler, made things happen by going past people, and that Kenny said maybe Aaron Conleith had lost that skill a little bit. He'd evolved in such a way that maybe that had come out of his game. So he's always wanted that type of player in the squad. Someone. In fact, like across Stephen Kenny's career, he's always had a thing about wingers. He's always, like, he had Paddy McCourt at Derry back in the day. Daryl Horgan when he was at Dundalk, who at that level was exceptionally good. And he's always had teams with those type of people who can make something happen. And I think he sees probably Mikey Johnston as a player who can make things happen. What's up in the air is his ability to make it happen, I suppose, at international level. Now, at Celtic, he was doing very well until his first long-term injury, and then I do think that as a club sometimes where, like, you're in the spotlight very early, and then if you begin to disappoint a bit, you can become old news very quickly. So he went out to Portugal, a fresh start, alone, and started the season very well. And all the reports were positive. The concern would be that he hasn't been playing very much in recent weeks. That would be the worry, that it did appear his trajectory was sort of moving upwards towards Christmas, and maybe since then he's hit a little bit of a loss of form. I don't know why that is, but Kenny certainly seems to think that there's always going to be a room that he'll make room in the squad for someone like that, and he's, I suppose, gone on record to say he thinks he'll have a big part to play in the campaign, but sort of caveated that by saying maybe not necessarily this month, but that Latvia game, I would see no reason if he's in the squad not to chuck him in there.
There was talk that Shane Duffy would do well to make the squad as Manchester City and Erling Haaland score another goal.
Every time I turn around, he seems to be celebrating a goal.
Every time his dad sits back down in his chair, he scored again. He's up again with his mates. So it's City 6-0, 7-1 in the night. Again, they've cut to dad in the crowd.
They just need to save some of their goals here, don't they?
Not at all.
Save them for when they need them.
Erling Haaland
was meant to be the difference in the Champions League. But he's not the five. I mean, he has scored 5 goals.
Gazillion goals. He's feeding on this.
But they want one when it's a tight semi-final.
He'll score one in a tight semi-final too. This is he's a true goal extrovert, Dan. He gets energy from this. This is not diminishing.
I mean, again,
battery.
He's just having like a really nice day for just everything falling in his direction.
Yeah. Every time he turns around, the ball falls to him in the box.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I would say that generally with a striker, that's brilliant movement. They're in the right place, but some of these he has just been a little bit fortunate.
Whenever it's Erling Haaland, I just assume there's innate movement happening.
Like the third goal, the hat-trick goal, that was like instinct following up to block. In fact, the first two, but I think that one is probably the luckiest one in the sense of the keeper with an unusual
he's at
punch in his direction.
8 attempts, 8 on target, 5 goals. If Guardiola takes him off now, I won't be happy. We want 10.
Do we?
Yeah, just for sheer hilarity of Erling Haaland scoring 10 goals in a game.
Just to get you through to Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
we'll always remember it. We're not going to remember the night he scored 5.
Yeah, it's not really an iconic fixture, Man City and Leipzig.
I was just asking, Shane Duffy was in danger of missing.
Yeah, I think he's in trouble. I think the issue you would have as well is that, like, it's a position where Ireland are pretty well stocked.
Yeah.
With Darragh O'Shea, with John Egan, with Nathan Collins, albeit Collins has only come off the bench recently.
And who's on if one of those is injured?
Kenny's a big fan of Andrew Omoma-Badele, who is now back. Also, Seamus Coleman is probably an option in the right of the back three. He has been playing regularly. And I suppose it is one game here we're talking about. You're talking about France, and I guess you're thinking, okay, how are you going to approach the France game? And of course, you're right, there's an injury, but you would assume that, like, for that game, he's probably going to be happy enough with either John Egan or Nathan Collins in the centre. Is he going to put in any scenario a Shane Duffy who hasn't played, who isn't sharp, to play against a team where you would think obviously the main threat you're worried about Mbappe, but a particular team that plays with real pace and power. If it's a game where you think you're going to be defending the box a lot, I can understand why, but for the very nature of this test, I would assume like match sharp players to play in the back three would be high up the list of priorities. So I'd say Duffy being a tricky, but you might still have him in the squad, the extended squad, but I can't see any scenario where he plays.
And to ask what will be the most asked question of the week, will Evan Ferguson start?
I mean, I just think with every week, the case for him starting gets stronger and stronger. Like I probably spoke 6 weeks ago, whenever Evan Ferguson really exploded at Premier League level, and my probably instinct at that point was that I just can't see him starting against France. I think Kenny probably has tried things out with various options and his forward line, and would he want to? It's probably just a wrong way of thinking. Would he want to sort of a real counter attack in number 9 in that game? But actually, you just watch Ferguson every week, and the quality of his all-round play is so good. He's played against Konate twice. He holds the ball up well and actually brings others into the game, which helps relieve pressure against for a team that might be under the cosh. So I think it is. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a dilemma then, because you have to figure out what partnerships do I need to form? And he was in the squad in November at least, so it's not his first time meeting the players. He did come on for a couple of games, but it feels like he's just even a different animal since then. Like you're looking tonight, like Troy Parrott, who I think has done very well for Kenny, but he's on the bench for Preston, away to Rotherham.
Has he generally been on the bench?
No, he's been involved, but there's actually Tom Cannon, who's been involved in Irish underage squads on loan from Everton. He scored again tonight. He scored in the last couple of games. He actually seems to be ahead of Parrott in the moment, even though, speaking to people like Cannon, I think he's more of a poacher type of striker. But anyway, that's by the by. When you've maybe Troy Parrott in that situation, you've Adam Ida, who's back, but again, in and out of the side at Norwich. I'd be a big fan of Ida actually. Obafemi, okay, he's coming off the bench for Burnley and they're going to go up, and he's a talent. And Ogbene's been very solid and very good for Rotherham. But Evan Ferguson's doing it every week in the Premier League. I think sometimes there's a tendency for fans or people just to sort of go, he's playing in the Premier League, he has to play, and it sort of doesn't have respect for the process of trying to build a team and a squad and an understanding. But this is a sustained, this isn't just someone who's made 2 appearances, and 3 appearances. And sometimes you have these calls for players off the back of that, which wouldn't always be rational. I think in this instance, he's playing at such a level. He's played more Premier League football in the last month than most of those other options mentioned have in their entire career. Adam Ida had a good spell last year. Obafemi's had spells, but probably never been a prolonged starter for a run of games at that level.
He hasn't. Looking at Obafemi at Swansea, there are 26 appearances across the season, but we're talking 2 goals since the 1st of November. Now, admittedly, there were 2 in February, so that's good. But again, compared to Ferguson's body of work right now.
Yeah, well, he had his. Well, the thing about Obafemi was he had that sag over leaving Swansea. He eventually left in January to join Burnley, but he was in the bad books with Swansea, so he actually wasn't involved for large portions of the season. And now he's gone to Burnley, who are flying, who are strolling to promotion, and they're just sort of using him off the bench with an established squad. So I wouldn't be looking at just stats for Obafemi this year. That wouldn't really tell the story of his year at all. It's just more the case that what Ferguson is doing, and even just the way that he plays, the maturity that he plays. The one concern you would have is that Brighton are brilliant, right? But as they're Brighton are brilliant, they have such a brilliant game plan, and they're he's clearly working with them every week, every day. He has come into Premier League football with an understanding of his role with players around him, and now he's going to come into an international setup where just things operate in a slightly different way in terms of how much time they have together, the time you have.
And you're selling me all the negatives here.
Well, I'm not. I'm just I mean,
put him in.
Oh yeah, well, you just throw him in and expect him to elevate them like an NBA star, just sort of build it. I mean, just trying to explain why that may not happen. I think there's a real danger of people going, oh God, if he's taken off after 65 minutes after being ineffective, oh Jesus, It's well, there's logical reasons why that could easily happen.
Agreed, I hear all that. I would presume somebody's hands-on as Stephen Kenny is potentially already in communication with Ferguson. He's been talked to about the game plan. There's a fair amount of preparation that they'll have, not least the Latvia game. So I think this guy's able to take on information and play within a system. I mean, I think he can definitely take on board the Kenny plan.
No, I completely. I'm not doubting.
Why are you talking down him? Have we clipped this?
No, you see, I'm not talking down Evan Ferguson at all. I'm just saying
the realities of football,
the realities of expecting him to slot in he's incredibly good, and I've no doubt he's going to be around for a long time. And I think, you know, the Ireland's chances of getting to tournaments in the next 15 years have improved because Evan Ferguson has come along. There's no doubt about that. It's just like it's been measured enough about what he can deliver in the short term, and that's like Kenny has played this 3-4-2-1 at times, or like a 3-4-3 at times, and again with Ferguson, you know, who do you play off him? I think there's like, and I think, you know, there's no doubt that Kenny, and this is the thing about Kenny and the staff, the one thing, no matter what people will end up saying about Stephen Kenny whenever he does leave, I think even, you know, I think even sort of people maybe around the FAI who may not be mad about him, they'll never deny the work that the staff will put in terms of like their prep and the meetings they will have. But this is something that I think has come a little bit ahead of schedule for them, Ferguson breaking through, and it's just led them to evaluate, like, okay, can you play Parrott and Ferguson together? Do you need, and against France, like, what you're going to need off the ball in certain situations? And like, it's a real, like, they're going to have to put a lot of work into that. And the Latvia game is great for confidence and understanding, but clearly, like, playing against Latvia versus playing against France is just like a completely different sport almost. So it's what they try and get from that first game that can be useful in some way for the second game. And if you play, like, if you want to play Ferguson and Obafemi, I just don't think you do that against France. Maybe that's what you want to do longer term, but then that influences like the shape and the structure behind you and how the team operates.
You wanted to mention the new shape of World Cups going forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few other things going on. Like, I probably should mention Ireland under 17 to some stage as well, qualifying, which is linked to that. But I mean, we did have the confirmation today. Well, the FIFA Congress is in Rwanda this week. Gianni Infantino will be standing unopposed, so he's his Constitution Hill style favourite to get over the line. In fact, I think maybe even a more resounding favourite. You know, the odds in the double wouldn't have been very favourable.
Who's the honeysuckle of the football world?
The honeysuckle of the football world
to get this going. I
mean, I feel like this is only going to bring us down a bad road if I go down that way. I'm not even sure. The persistent, No, I'm going to stop with that one. I don't even know who that is. But what I do know is that Infantino will be re-elected, and he is well down the road towards potentially being in charge till 2031. And what we're seeing is,
just don't want to be talking about Gianni Infantino.
Well, you will be. You will be. Yeah, he quite skillfully pointed out that even though he took over and had quite a long term when he initially took over the role from Blatter, that doesn't count as one full term, so he's entitled to like the full quota of like whatever 3 full terms what it is.
He's entitled, all right.
Yeah, of course he is. So anyway, it has been confirmed that, and I think on balance, right, the 48 team World Cup was in place. They had this planned for 16 groups of 3, which in my view would have been a disaster. Now the 48 team World Cup is in place. I mean, we've had the 32 team World Cup there, which aside from where it was, is the perfect competition in terms of the format, the shape of it. You just couldn't, I mean, why would you fix it? Like, when it's not broken, but you're FIFA. So of course you did. You know, so that's already done. But in a way, it's like, but that's game over, ball burst now. That's gone. Within the 48 team World Cup, the idea of a 3-team group was just leading you open to all sorts of like shambolic situations. So they have now confirmed probably the best case scenario of it is to do 12 groups of 4, but it's going to make the competition a week and a half longer, or a week longer, basically. So you're going to have more games, a lot more of a slog, you know, a sort of a 5.5 week tournament now, which, I mean, if it's great football, like, that's fantastic. And I still think it's better than the alternative, I have to say, within the 48 team. Like, it is one thing to say, well, the best is what was there already, but that's gone. That ship has sailed, because it's in line with a lot of FIFA policies and football tournaments generally. Make them bigger because it's politically better when you are elected by virtue of a sort of a first past the post system, when everyone has an equal vote of whatever 211 nations. So you get like 48 of them in. Result. You know?
So in all these group stages, we'll still have top 2 qualify, and then 8 of the next best. So third place in 8 groups will go through. In effect, we'll have 32 teams through to the knockout stages.
It appears to be the case, yeah.
So 16 teams will go home.
I think they have to finalise some of the still absolutely nail the regulations, but that does seem to be the thing. Yeah, the Euro, the 24-team Euros is not dissimilar. Third place is generally fine.
The final batch of matches in the group stages at the World Cup just gone were incredibly good those nights.
Yeah,
they were sensational. And now will it just be a bit of a dud? Well,
I suppose there were combinations in those nights where teams like that Spain, Germany group, Costa Rica, at one point it wasn't Germany bottom, but it's obviously harder now. I suppose the argument is a bit more like seeding. It's if you become a third place team, are you more likely to have a heavyweight game? But obviously we in the round of 32. But what we do know is by more teams in the competition, there's obviously a strong chance that you're going to have less depth in groups that the bigger teams. Now, I do think, to be fair, what we did see at the World Cup is that you sometimes are very dismissive of the teams in Asia and other confederations. So I think we'll get used to it, and I still think it's better than the alternative, but obviously the perfect World Cup has been broken. Also, this Club World Cup is coming out every 4 years, and this is part of their big thing as well. And Irish fans will be sort of quite interested in this, that we're so used to the rhythm of the international year, where it's games in September, games in October, games in November. From 2026, they're turning that September-October 2 windows into one. So you're going to have this 16-day window with 4 games.
I think that's really good.
Every year. I think it's really good if you're a bigger nation. I think for a smaller one, if your entire year ends up revolving around 2 weeks, and Evan Ferguson gets a 3-week knock, that's not great. Too
much negativity to me here. It's a festival of international.
Well, no, I think you're just thinking. You're probably just thinking, less international breaks. That's basically what you're probably thinking.
No, I was thinking that there'd be a mini tournament feel to it. We could all really park the Premier League or park club football and say, right, we've got these 4 matches across these 2 weeks. Everybody really gets stuck into it.
Well, yeah, but the rest of the campaign is going to be at a rhythm of 2-game windows.
I can live with that too.
Yeah.
I'm just declaring a slight preference for a month of Irish talk down with you and me.
It's just, I can see, yes, I'm not going to suggest you're going to book your holidays for that time sometimes.
What?
Just take a...
Sorry, no, I'm all in on that. I mean,
we'll still be having a Stephen Kenny debate in 2026, probably.
Yeah, at that stage. We probably will.
Yeah.
No, I genuinely, I think there's a degree of, right, let's really have it.
I will say that the Nations League won last year with the 4-game window.
Yeah.
By the end of it, you felt like Ireland were hitting their stride.
See, you don't like it because you'll just get so much. You just hate the culture war that the Irish team is. You're just thinking, oh my God, a month of social media.
Yeah,
in my life, but park all that. I think it will be like a mini World Cup for you.
Well, the only thing, as I would say, is that it is linked with the moves to try and make this Club World Cup a thing. They need to make room in the calendar for the Club World Cup. So we're going to try and rush through our own version of a club tournament here to rival UEFA's one. So something has to give. So it's not that it's necessarily been brought in for the right reasons, I would say anyway.
Fair enough.
And this Club World Cup, 32 team, no more than 2 from one country, unless I think one has won the Champions League, or there's a couple of provisions for that. Where that goes, where that sits into the calendar, it does feel like, a lot of these discussions, like the long World Cup, there's going to be, if someone like Kylian Mbappe, how many games are you going to end up playing in his career, at that point, 25, 26, 25, 26, already there is this number of games you have to play in a year. This Qatar year is exceptional. But imagine some of the top end players who are going to a Club World Cup and expect to be involved in the business end of major tournaments. I do think at some stage there is going to be a kickback from player unions about this.
Yeah.
About sort of some sort of player welfare issues. I know some people think, pampered. But I mean, it is true. Careers burn out sometimes through some of this stuff. And we love football, but you can have too much, and the Premier League isn't going to cede any ground on its scheduling, because naturally that's such a monster.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night